Chapter 240. The Chun clan from the Chun clan of the Eastern City County? Zhang Zhen couldn't help but exclaim. Seeing the lady in purple nodding her head, he quickly explained, the Chun clan is the #1 clan in the East City County. The daughter of the Chun clan's patriarch has been conferred the title of Empress of the Martial Kingdom. As for the badges of the Chun clan, they are divided into 4 grades: violet gold, gold, copper, and iron. The violet gold is the most precious of the 4. It's said that you can request something from the Chun clan with the badge. Judging from the grade of the violet gold badge, it's not difficult to ask for a Shinto pill from the Chun clan. What do you think? The purple-robed woman continued. If you're still worried, you can keep the purple gold token for the time being. With these words, she threw out a palm-sized, violet golden command medallion that was faintly sealed with a special spiritual aura. She didn't even see how she did it. An interspatial pouch? Ziyue's eyes flickered as he finally confirmed the lady's identity. She was indeed an immortal cultivator. However, he was not sure how strong she was. Putting aside his doubts, Ziyue received the violet gold badge and said, "Since you're so generous, I won't be unreasonable. I'll accept the task." Even though he knew that there would definitely be a certain amount of danger, he was still extremely confident in his own strength. As long as it wasn't a Shinto realm or an immortal cultivator, he was confident that he could handle it. Not to mention, the Shinto pill was indeed tempting to him. Although he was only a second-rated expert, he was confident that he could reach the peak of the first-rated expert in a short period of time. The Shinto pill was something he needed to break through to the Shinto realm. On an official road, 3 carriages were lined up in a row, surrounded by a group of more than 10 people on tall horses. This group belonged to the 4 Seas Escort Agency, where Ziyue and the others were at. The carriage at the very front was filled with some fur goods, and it was guarded by the escort leader of the 4 Seas Escort Agency, Zhang Zhen. The immortal spell cultivator sat alone in the carriage at the back, and Bai Ziyue sat in the last carriage. It had been 3 days since the night of the heavy rain. These 3 days were calm and peaceful, and the journey was smooth. Not even bandits had appeared. As such, Bai Ziyue gradually relaxed and focused his attention on his own cultivation. Because of the purple-clothed woman, he decided to be careful and hide the fact that he was also an immortal cultivator for the time being. Therefore, even though the Soul Converging Flag was only 4 restrictions away from upgrading from a middle-grade magic tool to a high-grade magic tool, he could only put it aside for the time being. However, unlike inscribing restrictions that required him to draw upon the spiritual energy within his body, erasing the restriction on the storage bag required his mental strength. As such, he wasn't afraid of being discovered by the purple-robed woman. Therefore, in his free time, he would spend most of his time trying to destroy the sealing power on the storage bag. Over the past few days, he had made good progress. Even if this storage pouch he obtained from the immortal martial treasury was much better than the one he was currently using, its sealing power was also much stronger. However, his mental strength was also much stronger than before. Therefore, the speed at which he was destroying the sealing power within was much faster. He estimated that it would only take him a day or 2 to completely erase the sealing force inside it. Then, he would be able to open the storage bag. I hope that the things inside will surprise me. Ziyue couldn't help but feel some anticipation in his heart. Apart from destroying the sealing power within the storage bag, he naturally didn't give up on his own cultivation. His protective technique, the Golden Bell Shield, was constantly circulating at high speed. Although the improvement wasn't great with each circulation, there would always be some improvement over the years. Currently, he could already feel that he wasn't far from stepping into the 6th layer of the Golden Bell Shield. Of course, this was due to the increase in his status panel, which had directly raised this technique to the peak of the 5th layer. However, his tireless cultivation during this period of time was also one of the reasons. Apart from the Golden Bell Shield, Ziyue's most important cultivation was the Violet Kingdom Creation Art. The Violet Kingdom Creation Art had a total of 4 chapters. They were the Internal Strength chapter, the 12 Standard Meridians chapter, the 8 Extraordinary Meridians chapter, and the final chapter, the Purple Chi Creation chapter. The cultivation of the previous 3 chapters was for accumulating internal strength and unblocking the 12 Standard Meridians and 8 Extraordinary Meridians. As for the Purple Chi Creation chapter, it was a type of integration. Using the internal strength as a route, it would pass through the 12 Standard Meridians and 8 Extraordinary Meridians, forming a complete circulation route. When the internal strength was complete and endless, that was when a first-rate expert reached the peak. Ziyue had originally thought that this would be a rather simple matter. However, when he actually followed the circulation route to cultivate, he discovered that it wasn't simple at all. The 12 Standard Meridians and 8 Extraordinary Meridians were actually all single meridians that weren't completely connected. Only by using some relatively small meridians in the middle could they be connected. If he wanted to cultivate according to the circulation route, he first needed to further unblock those small meridians. This was actually a process that required a lot of energy and thought. After a few days, he had only barely managed to connect 2 of the 12 Standard Meridians, the hand's 3 meridians, together. Only when all the Standard Meridians and Extraordinary Meridians are completely connected and my internal strength is completely circulated according to the circulation route can I be considered to have broken through the level of a second-rate expert and stepped into the ranks of a first-rate expert. Based on this speed, it would take at least 3 to 4 months to go from the peak of a second-rate expert to a first-rate expert. As Ziyue thought to himself, his gaze once again fell on his attribute panel. Optimizing data, please wait a moment. As expected, the upgrade this time also required a certain amount of time. Their current progress was only 30% of the total. Based on this calculation, he still needed 15 days. There are still 15 days before the attribute panel will be officially upgraded. During this period of time, I can only rely on myself to cultivate. Ziyue squinted his eyes and quickly calmed down. Although he wasn't used to it, he wouldn't overly rely on it. To him, cultivation was already a habit. Even with the assistance of the attribute panel, he wouldn't give up on self-cultivation. Be careful, there's an enemy. Immediately after, the advancing carriage suddenly braked and stopped abruptly. Ziyue's body leaned forward violently, and then he relied on his strong control to stop. The black puppy lying at the side swung its body violently and slid out of the carriage, quickly falling out. What's going on? Ziyue leaped out of the carriage and heard Zhang Zhen's voice from afar. He said heroically, "It's just a group of ordinary bandits. Mr. Bai doesn't have to do anything this time. We'll be enough." Immediately after, he let out a long howl and quickly rushed to the group of bandits in front of him. There were more than 20 of them in this group of bandits. The strongest among them was only a martial artist at the peak of internal refinement. Against a third-rate expert like Zhang Zhen and a group of martial artists who were at least internal refinement, they were no match at all. Soon, one of them shouted, "Retreat!" Then, leaving behind 7 to 8 corpses, they retreated to the top of the mountain at an even faster speed. Haha, a group of small thieves dare to rob Grandpa Zhang of his escort? Don't you know about the reputation of the 4 C's escort agency? Zhang Zhen laughed as he returned with a carefree look on his face. The others were also immensely pleased with themselves. The journey of escorting an escort was actually quite depressing. It was also not an easy thing to ride a horse to hasten the journey. They were naturally happy to have such weak bandits to loosen up their muscles and relax for a while. Ziyue glanced at the bandits who were fleeing quickly and frowned slightly. The 4 C's escort agency should be quite famous in the surrounding area, right? Ziyue suddenly asked. That's right. Our head escort, the invincible Iron Fist Wang Jing, is a true first-rate expert. He's a well-known figure in the vicinity of the East City County. Now, this area still belongs to the Tianshui County, but it's not far from the East City County. In addition, the Four Seas Escort Agency escorts people all over the world, so we're quite famous. Even the average martial arts expert would have to give some face to him. Zhang Zhen spoke eloquently. Suddenly, his expression changed and his heart skipped a beat. He asked, "Mr. Bai, are you saying that there's something wrong with this group of bandits?" After thinking carefully, he did feel that something was not right. Their momentum was not fast, especially those bandits who had reached the inner refinement state and above. They were obviously lagging behind the rest. After they attacked, the speed of their defeat was a little too fast. They retreated as soon as they came into contact with the bandit. The speed of their escape was much faster than when they had charged up. Previously, he thought that it was because his group was stronger, but now that he thought about it, it was obviously not right. "We don't have anything valuable in our carriages," Linley said. As Ziyue spoke, he looked faintly at the top of the mountain. "There's only some animal skins in my carriage. They're worth at most a few hundred taels of silver. Damn it, we've been targeted. This group of people is obviously here to sound us out." Zhang Zhen's mind raced and he quickly figured it out. It was only worth a few hundred taels of silver. In a situation where they were all martial arts experts, it was simply not worth the risk. It would be strange if there was nothing wrong with this group of bandits. Chapter 241. It doesn't matter if there's a problem with them, we can't stay here any longer. Ziyue glanced at the carriage in the middle as he spoke. He could vaguely see the purple-clad lady sitting in the carriage, unmoved. Since it was not convenient for him to criticize her, he quickly returned to the carriage. On the other hand, Zhang Zhen began to ask everyone to get on their horses and speed up. After traveling for a short distance, Zhang Zhen rode a horse and approached Ziyue. He said, "Master Bai, the Langya Valley is not far ahead. It's a canyon path that's more than 10 miles long. Usually, there would be bandits gathering in such a place. In the past, with the Four Seas Escort Agency's reputation, they would always give us some face and let us pass smoothly. However, I don't think we can do it this time. It's not that easy to pass." Through the previous encounter, he naturally knew that the true target of this group of bandits was very likely Miss Qing, who was on the carriage in the middle. Although he did not know the other party's identity and who he had offended, he had to complete the mission even if he had to kneel. Most importantly, it was difficult for him to reject the other party's offer, and he did not want to reject it. Now that he vaguely guessed the other party was a celestial master, he did not dare to reject the offer. Therefore, he only hoped to complete this mission as soon as possible and return to the East City County. Ziyue flipped over slightly and climbed up to the top of the carriage. He discovered the path was straight and wide enough for 3 carriages to travel side by side. However, there were intersecting ridges and cliffs on both sides of the path that resembled the fangs of a wolf. In such a place, as long as someone was prepared in advance with a bow and arrow or prepared a mountain rock, it would be enough to severely injure anyone who walked on this path. Ziyue's heart skipped a beat and he quickly asked, "Is there another path?" "Yes, but to pass through it, we'll have to travel another 30 miles. Zhang Zhen nodded and said with a frown, "Moreover, it's a mountain path, and the carriage won't be able to pass through." "What did Miss Qing say?" Ziyue asked. "She said she believes in your strength," Zhang Zhen replied. Did this mean that he didn't want to give up on the carriage? Ziyue muttered in his heart. Just as he was about to open his mouth, someone suddenly approached him and said, "We can't make the mountain path anymore. There was a heavy downpour a while ago, and a large part of the mountain slid down. Our men can go over, but the horses definitely won't be able to." Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. What a coincidence. That's great. Let's just take this official road. Zhang Zhen was taken aback. Then, he said heroically, Actually, even if there are bandits in Langya Valley, it might be difficult for ordinary people. However, for martial artists like us, it's nothing. It doesn't matter if it's an arrow or a falling rock. With our skills, we can easily dodge it. The only thing he was worried about was the strength of the bandits. However, as far as I know, the strongest group of bandits in the vicinity of Langya Valley is the Black Wind Stronghold. Their leader's name is unknown, but his nickname is Black Whirlwind. His strength is only a third-rate expert, comparable to mine. Second Bandit Chief, Third Bandit Chief, and Fourth Bandit Chief were all in the realm of inner strength. The others were not enough to be a threat. At least, with Mr. Bai's strength, it's enough to crush them. Ziue pondered for a while and nodded. He said, "All right, but we have to be fast. We have to rush through the valley in the shortest time possible. If necessary, we can abandon the carriages and horses." "Okay," Zhang Jin replied and started to give out orders. Soon, a group of more than 10 people rode their horses and surrounded the two sides of the 3 carriages. Then, they raised their horsewhip. Dong, dong, dong. The strong horse suddenly sped up and rushed into the Langya Valley. Langya Valley was connected to Tianshui County and Dongqing County. Although it wasn't a necessary route, it was still an important one. There were many bandits in the valley. The Black Wind Stronghold was one of the strongest. At the end of Langya Valley there was a steep area. It was quiet, but in a slightly sunken open space, a group of almost 100 bandits gathered. It was a huge black mass. "Old Chong and the others are back." Suddenly, a voice was heard. Then, a group of more than 10 people quickly approached. Some of them were injured. "Old Chong, how is it?" A big man with a face full of whiskers and a face that was tanned by the sun came up and asked. "Leader, this group of people isn't weak. There should be 3 of them who have reached the inner energy realm. The others are all in the inner refining realm. This time, we sent out 20 people, but only about 10 came back. The others are all dead. Also, I noticed that they have a total of 3 carriages. In one of them, there's a woman in purple clothes. If I'm not wrong, she's our target this time. As for the other 2 carriages, one of them has some beast skins. The inner energy realm martial artists are sitting in that carriage. In the other carriage, there's a person who looks like a teenager. There's a big dog beside him. It should be a strange beast. I think his identity is quite noble. But this kind of person is young, so his strength must be weak. I think he's at most in the inner refining realm. There's nothing to worry about." Old Chong cupped his hands and said, "Leader, what's the identity of that woman? Is it worth it for our Blackwind stronghold to come out in full force? Also, the people on the opposite mountain aren't simple. They're all armed with bows and arrows. Could they be soldiers?" A person with a strong aura suddenly asked. Every movement had a special aura. He was clearly an expert in the inner energy realm or above. Naturally, she's not an ordinary person. It's said that she's an immortal cultivator. But you don't need to be too nervous. I received news that she's already heavily injured and can't use much of her strength. Also, this matter was sent by Mount Qilian. Tell me, do you think I'd dare to not do it? Moreover, the reward from Mount Qilian isn't low. It's enough for all of us to eat and drink for half a year. The leader patted the shoulder of the person who spoke and said, "Mount Qilian's orders?" That person glared and immediately nodded gravely. He knew that Mount Qilian was one of the top mountains in the martial country. It was said that there was a legendary Xiantian overseeing it. In front of Qilian Shan, their Blackwind stronghold was truly like an ant that could be crushed with a wave of his hand. With the strength of their leader, He Xianfeng, he didn't have the courage to refuse the other party's request. As for the other side, they're not soldiers. They should be bandits like us. However, they're from the Plain District. He Xianfeng, the chief of the stronghold, continued. Plain District? 18 Eagle Kings? Old Chong also revealed a shocked expression when he heard this. He said, "This is a group of fierce people. There are only 18 of them, but each of them has the ability to shoot an Eagle King from 800 meters away. Also, it's said that these 18 people all have the strength of inner energy realm or above. Among them, the Heavenly Eagle King is said to have reached the level of a second-rate expert. I just saw that there are 18 of them, no more and no less. Doesn't this mean that they're also coming out in full force? He Xianfeng nodded gravely and said, "This time, the main force is on their side. We're just cooperating with them. Relatively speaking, it's quite easy." Report. At this moment, a skinny figure quickly walked over. "Speak. The carriage is coming. It'll pass by us in less than half an incense's time." "Good. Tell the brothers to get ready. Also, raise the flag so that the other side will be on guard," He Xianfeng said excitedly. Immediately, everyone began to prepare. The horses galloped and rumbled in the valley. Ziyue didn't sit comfortably in the carriage. Instead, he sat cross-legged at the top of the carriage and glanced at the peaks on both sides. "We'll be out of the valley in another 3 li. It seems that our previous worries were unnecessary. The Blackwind stronghold won't dare to make a move against us." One of the men from the escort agency let out a sigh of relief and said proudly, "Be careful. There's an ambush." Ziyue's eyes were sharp. Even from far away, he could faintly see the figures on the 2 peaks in front of them. "Hurry up and pass through as soon as possible," Zhang Zhen roared. Although he hadn't found any traces of the bandits, he chose to believe them without hesitation. Everyone's hearts could not help but tighten. They hurriedly swung the reins, causing the already extremely fast horses' speed to increase by a large margin. Ziyue's eyes were deep and his breathing became extremely calm. He thought that he would be nervous, but in fact, he wasn't. He only felt that his qi and blood, which was originally calm, gradually became turbulent. Then, it became agitated as if his blood was boiling. He didn't even think of hiding it. A strong qi and blood rolled up like smoke signals. The tyrannical aura of a powerhouse was emitted. It was truly a majestic feeling. Carefree. Compared to Qinghe Town, he always wore a mask in Wujiang County and carefully hid his strength. Even if he had the strength to crush countless people, he didn't dare to reveal it. At this moment, he only felt carefree. Perhaps this was the true pursuit of a martial artist, the hot-blooded pugilistic world. "Kill!" Ziyue let out a long roar. Instantly, a sense of heroism rose in his heart. He suddenly jumped off the horse. His inner strength surged as he performed the 7 stars chasing the moonlightness skill. He quickly rushed to the top of the mountain. "Mr. Bai," Zhang Zhen was shocked. "Don't worry. I'll kill my way out from here." An indifferent voice was heard, and Bai Ziyue's figure had already shot out. His speed was more than twice as fast as that of a horse. You're courting death." On the mountain, a group of 18 people had sharp gazes like eagles. When the leader saw this, a cold expression appeared on his face. He casually took out an arrow and placed it on the bowstring. The bow was made from the horns of a top-grade exotic beast, the golden barbaric bull, and was instantly pulled into a full moon. Clang! The arrow shot out at an extreme speed. Chapter 242. The distance of 800 meters was covered in the blink of an eye. Ziyue raised his eyebrows. He did not even draw his saber, but his palm had already reached out like a dream. Heaven-binding hands. It was as if he was waving his hand and splashing ink. Buzz. Ziyue clenched his hand slightly and caught the arrow firmly in his hand. The 2 ends of the arrow were trembling violently. "It's impolite not to reciprocate." Bai Ziyue let out a long howl. His footsteps did not stop, but his hand turned slightly. His palm quickly moved around the arrow. Waves of inner strength followed the movement of his palm and turned into thin threads. Then, the arrow started to spin like an electric drill. "Go!" The arrow shot out from his hand like a bolt of lightning, and with a speed that was far faster than before, it was sent flying back. The expression of King Tianying, who was the leader, changed. He quickly pulled the bowstring again. Chi! The two arrows collided. One of the arrows shattered in an instant. The other arrow that was shot towards King Tianying did not lose its momentum and continued to shoot out. However, there was a slight deviation in the direction of his flight. One of the men let out a blood-curdling scream as he clutched his neck with both hands. He directly fell down from the cliff and landed heavily at the bottom of the cliff. What Bai Ziyue didn't expect was that the arrow that he had shot back with the heaven-binding hands actually managed to play its role despite the deviation of the arrow's collision. It accurately hit one of the 18 Eagle King's inner force realm martial artists. It pierced deeply into his neck. There was a mistake in the chaos. How is this possible? King Tianying's face was filled with disbelief. Quick, shoot an arrow and stop him. Then, he immediately reacted. He roared and pulled the bowstring again. After shooting an arrow, he quickly nocked another arrow. Several arrows were connected together like silk threads and shot out. Chain arrows. At this moment, the others also shot out one after another. Their archery skills were not much weaker than King Tianying's. The arrows kept shooting out with frightening accuracy. They were all aimed at the figure in white who was rushing over quickly. Even though there were only 17 people, at this moment, it was as if there were hundreds of people shooting arrows at the same time. Clang, clang, clang. Accompanied by the sound of the wind being torn apart, the densely packed arrows arrived in front of Ziyue in the blink of an eye. Saber, come! Ziyue roared. The long saber at his waist was driven by his inner force. It shot out like lightning and was caught by him. The saber light was like a long rainbow. When Ziyue's martial arts realm was still at the outer tempered and inner tempered, his long saber was already impenetrable. Now, he was more than 100 times stronger. Even though the arrows carried greater power, they were like grains of grass under Bai Ziyue's black god saber. They were all brushed away by his saber. Bai Ziyue withstood the countless arrows and moved through the rocks as if he was walking on flat ground. He was extremely fast. Even though these arrows were fierce, cunning, swift, and powerful, they could not get within a meter of him. Damn it! King Tianying was shocked. There was a trace of fear in the depths of his eyes. Who was he? Ziyue's appearance was completely out of his expectations. His opponent's methods made him feel a sense of helplessness. He took a deep breath to calm himself down. Then, he carefully took out an arrow from his back. It was completely red, as if it was a piece of burning metal. Its tail was embedded with a 5-colored luster. Flame arrow. This was a type of arrow that he had specially hired someone to refine for him at great cost. Its value was no less than that of the best longbow in his hand. Back then, he had made a total of 10 arrows. After years of consumption, there were only 3 left. Usually, he would not bear to use it. However, after seeing Ziyue's means, he finally decided to shoot this expensive arrow. He placed the flame arrow on the longbow and pulled it into a full moon. The inner force in his body flowed through the bow and into the arrow. In an instant, the crimson arrow blossomed with a flame-like radiance. It was as if the arrow was going to burn up. Clang! The flame arrow shot out like a hurricane. It was unstoppable. There was a faint layer of spiritual light on the 5-colored red tail. It was like the flapping of a bird's wings, causing the speed of this arrow to be much faster than other arrows by a large margin. Puff, puff, puff. The moment the arrows collided with the flame arrow, they quickly shattered. The hurricane whistled, and in the blink of an eye, it was in front of Ziyue. Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Spiritual chi fluctuation. This arrow already had a kind of talisman. To be more precise, it had the characteristics of a one-time Dharma artifact. There was no need to say more about its power. However, it's still useless to me. Vibrating blade skill. The long saber was raised, and as fast as a startled swan, it lightly touched the flame arrow. Bang! A dull sound echoed in the surrounding forest like a muffled thunder. The flame arrow dispersed in an instant. Flames that were as hot as magma shot out in an instant and spread out like a sea of fire. It was enough to cover an area of a few meters. Buzz, buzz, buzz. One after another, golden bells suddenly appeared on Zyue's body. Protective divine skill, golden bell shield. The layers of golden bells were like thick city walls. The hot flames had no effect on the golden bells. In the next moment, Zyue's figure had already rushed out of the sea of fire. 200 meters, 100 meters, 50 meters, Zyue moved as if he was flying. He was like a flash of lightning as he approached rapidly. At this time, Zyue was not as concerned about the rain of arrows as before. The dense rain of arrows fell on his golden bell shield. There were only muffled sounds, but they could not shake the defense of the golden bell shield at all. The peak of the 5th level of the golden bell shield was enough to block the full force attack of a second-rate master. These arrows could pose a threat to ordinary inner refining realm warriors, or even inner force realm warriors. However, to him, they were not that effective. Moreover, the moment the 4th level of the golden bell shield was shattered and the 3rd level of the golden bell shield was on the verge of collapse, a layer of dense golden light suddenly appeared on the outermost layer of the golden bell shield. The 6th level of the golden bell shield had appeared. After this continuous consumption, Zyue's golden bell shield, which was originally at the peak of the 5th level, instantly broke through and rose to the 6th level. Kill! Zyue roared as he fiercely collided with the 18 Eagle Kings. Zyue raised his long blade. A layer of black flashed on the black god blade as he slashed out consecutively. King Tianying flew back, kept his longbow, and pulled out his long blade. His inner force surged, causing the long blade to emit a dazzling red light. Die! After all, he was an expert who had cultivated to the level of a second-rate master. His archery skills were unparalleled, but what was even stronger was his blade technique. The other 10 or so experts who had reached the inner force realm did not make a sound as they all pulled out their weapons and quickly surrounded him. Raising his eyebrows, Zyue stepped on the 7 stars chasing the moon. The blade light was like a black waterfall. When it slashed down, it was like the might of the heavens. It was overbearing and unstoppable. Tyrant blade technique. An inner force realm warrior held a long spear and wanted to launch a surprise attack. However, his vision blurred and he saw the black blade quickly pass by. At this moment, he felt that the long blade seemed to contain the truth of the martial path. It contained endless mysteries, causing him to involuntarily become intoxicated. When the blade light descended, the moment he was about to wake up, his consciousness was scattered, and his body was sliced in half. Old 9. Amidst the shout, Zyue rushed forward. The blade light quickly swept out. As his inner force surged, the black god blade seemed to have merged with the heavens and earth. Layer after layer of ripples spread out in all directions as the black divine saber vibrated. Bang! 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 The air vibrated, causing their chi and blood to form a strange resonance with it. In an instant, everyone's heartbeat quickened. Bang! 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 It was as if their hearts were going to jump out of their chests. Their chi, blood, and strength became lax at this moment. The surrounding air seemed to be in a viscous state, and it took a lot of effort to pull it in between breath. Chi! 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 A total of 3 heads flew into the sky. As blood spurted out, they rolled on the ground. Who are you? Why are you so strong? King Tianying was extremely shocked. Each of the 18 Eagle Kings had the strength to kill the grassland Eagle King that had evolved into a mutated beast from 800 meters away. Their strength was not weak either. The weakest of them was at the inner force realm. Other than him, who had just become a second-rate expert, there were a total of 5 people who had reached the third-rate expert level. Even if it was him, He would not be able to withstand the attacks of several people and would be defeated very quickly. However, the person in front of him looked like a youth. However, his strength was so high that it made him feel terrified. Was he a second-rate expert or a first-rate expert? Ziyue did not answer. He had fought to the point of madness, and his heart was filled with heroic spirit. He swung his blade and swung his blade again. Every slash was fatal. This feeling of fighting against the 8 desolates made him extremely excited. As his blood boiled, his combat strength was completely unleashed. King Tianying's expression changed drastically. In a short period of time, 7 or 8 people on his side had died in the hands of the other party. In the blink of an eye, the 18 Eagle Kings had become 10. As anger surged, his eyes suddenly lit up. Opportunity! The 18 Eagle Kings naturally lived up to their reputation in the 800 miles of the plains. Not only were they ruthless to their enemies, but they were even more ruthless to themselves. Ziyue's long blade cut through the weapon of a third-rate expert like a hot knife through butter. It also went into the other party's collarbone. However, at this moment the other party was crazy and decisive. He endured the boundless pain and hugged the black god blade tightly. At this moment, he sacrificed his own life to obtain a chance for others. Chapter 243. So strong, on the opposite cliff, He Xianfeng looked at the battle in shock. Deep in his eyes, he was shocked. The 18 Eagle Kings are all at least at the inner force realm. Among them, King Tianying is a second-rate great master. This youth was facing the encirclement of 18 Eagle Kings, including a second-rate expert like King Heavenly Eagle, but he was still so calm. With such skills, such strength, a second-rate expert was definitely a great expert above the second-rate. He might even be a first-rate master. Deep uneasiness and fear appeared in his heart. With this kind of existence protecting them, could they really complete Qi Lianshan's order and kill the target? Old Chang, didn't you say that the young man is nothing to worry about? This kind of existence is nothing to worry about? At this moment, the second bandit chief of Blackwind's stronghold was also anxious. He grabbed Old Chang, who was beside him, and his anger kept rising. I don't know either. How is this possible? Old Chang was terrified. He looked at the other side in a daze. The young man in white was very calm in the face of the rain of arrows. He crushed them and easily killed several great masters at the inner force realm. Logically speaking, this kind of person shouldn't be unknown at all. Old Chang's eyesight was quite good, but he didn't expect to be pecked in the eyes here. Bandit Chief, what should we do next? The target is almost at the foot of our mountain. The second bandit chief threw Old Chang to the ground and looked nervously at the head bandit chief. Is Mount Qilian scary or this young man? He Xianfeng was silent for a while. He calculated the gains and losses, then slowly shook his head and said, If Mount Qilian knows that we didn't attack, do you think our Blackwind stronghold will still exist? If we attack, we can say that we're not strong enough. If we don't attack, we'll definitely die. What should we do? Moreover, the 18 Eagle Kings haven't lost yet. As he spoke, He Xuanfeng's face showed determination. He shouted, Attack! Attack! As soon as he finished speaking, countless people from the Blackwind stronghold immediately began to move. Boom! 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 Pieces of huge rocks were pushed down from the top of the mountain by them. It was like the sound of muffled thunder, and the sound was loud and powerful. Die! King Tianying gripped the long saber in his hand tightly. The long, narrow, and sharp saber was like red-hot red iron. It was silent but extremely fast. Like a long river piercing the sun, it directly pierced towards Ziyue's temple. If this saber hit, he was confident that even if the other party had a protective cultivation technique, he wouldn't be able to block the saber that was infused with his entire body's strength. The other party's brain would definitely burst open and he would die from the stab. Ziyue snorted coldly. He flipped his hand that was holding the knife and pulled it with all his might. The knife sank diagonally into his heart and directly cut his heart into two halves. At the same time, his other hand slowly stretched out. It was a jade-white palm that was incomparably holy. When it slowly stretched out, the void seemed to be on the verge of collapse from the pressure. There was a strange wave of chi rolling in the center of his palm. He struck out with his hand. However, a huge palm print came out of his palm first. The ultimate technique of the immortal martial sect, the great immortal martial palm print. Because he only used his inner strength for this palm, it didn't have the majesty and wonder of the immortal martial technique. Moreover, because it was his first time using it, there were many areas where it was stagnant. However, when this palm was struck out, it could similarly suppress everything. Bang! Another dull sound rang out. King Tianying's long saber was like a willow catkin that was sent flying away. The great immortal martial palm print didn't have any momentum and ruthlessly landed on his body. Boom! The ground caved in because of this. King Tianying spat out a mouthful of blood and instantly knelt on the ground. He had already lost all signs of life. Clang! 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 King Tianying wasn't the only one who grasped that fleeting opportunity. The other people surrounding him were also experienced in battle. Their eyes lit up and they all made their move. Numerous weapons emitted boundless cold light as they landed on his body, causing clanging sounds to ring out. The 6-layered golden bell was destroyed in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, the eyes of the others lit up and they exerted all their strength to strike out their own attacks. Numerous long sabers slashed down rapidly. Sizzle! The sound of a blunt knife cutting through an old cow's skin instantly rang out. After cultivating the golden bell shield, Ziyue didn't just possess the protective golden bell. Even the defensive power of his skin and flesh was incomparable to before. Even if an inner strength cultivator attacked with full force, it would be difficult to break through his defense. Only the inner strength that penetrated his body could cause his chi and blood to churn and be affected. Everyone was aghast and their eyes were filled with disbelief. What kind of monster was this seemingly immature young man? Why was he so terrifying? King Tianying is dead. Suddenly, a cry of alarm rang out. Everyone, who was already terrified to begin with, was scared out of their wits in an instant. They lost their support. Almost without any hesitation, they, who were already terrified, turned around and fled without any hesitation. You only want to flee now? It's too late. Ziyue sneered and drew out his long saber. Like a black lightning bolt, it slashed out rapidly. Kill! Sizzle! 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 It was as if he was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Anyone who was caught by him could not escape the fate of being cut in half. Muffled sounds of the blade cutting into flesh rang out. Blood flowed on the ground. Broken flesh and broken limbs flew in all directions. Sizzle! 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 Over 10 corpses were strewn all over the ground, but there were no longer any signs of life. The 18 Eagle Kings had been completely annihilated and no longer existed. It's not over yet. Ziyue's eyes were like lightning as he quickly looked at the hundreds of bandits who were charging towards Zhang Zhen and the others. Without any hesitation, he quickly leaped down from the mountain peak and charged down. Run! 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 He Xianfeng and the others, who had just reached the bottom of the mountain and were about to attack Zhang Zhen and the others, saw the figure in white clothes that was dyed in blood. Their expressions changed drastically, and they immediately turned around and fled without any hesitation. Black Whirlwind had never imagined that not long after he gave the order to attack, the 18 Eagle Kings opposite him, who were all existences above the realm of inner strength, wouldn't even be able to last for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn before they were all killed by the white-clothed youth, completely annihilated. A slight difference in thought and the result was completely different. At this moment, he felt a heart-wrenching pain, as if his soul was about to leave his body. Kill! 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 Seeing Ziyue charging down, Zhang Zhen was incomparably excited. Apart from one or two people who stayed by the purple-clothed lady's side to protect her, everyone else charged forward. Ziyue's speed was extremely fast, and he did not hold back when he attacked. His long saber swept across and a large area was swept away. He would not have any mercy for these bandits, not to mention that he would only be able to collect their souls after they died. Even if the status panel was still in the process of upgrading, it would not affect the increase and decrease of his soul energy. Ziyue's speed was too fast. None of the bandits in the Black Wind stronghold could block his saber. Therefore, in an instant, he had caught up to the chief of the Black Wind stronghold, He Xianfeng. Without any hesitation, he slashed with his long saber. 3 meters away, a saber light flew out like lightning. It turned into a huge black saber that was more than 30 feet long and fell down with a loud bang. "Spare me!" He Xianfeng roared and immediately reacted. He raised his weapon to block, but before he could react, the saber light had already landed on his head. "The chief is dead." Amidst the exclamations, everyone ran even faster. After a short while, the battle ended. There were too many bandits. In the chaos, a portion of them still managed to escape. The scene was a mess with corpses everywhere. Ziyue noticed that many of their horses had died because of the rolling stones and the bandit. There were only 4 or 5 horses that were still standing. Even the carriage that the purple-clothed woman was in seemed to be the only one left. Because it was protected by the escort company, it was still in good condition. The others were scattered all over the place, broken into pieces by the stones. He couldn't help but calm down. Senior Bai Zhangzhen came to Ziyue's side and opened his mouth. He couldn't help but address him respectfully again. The fact that Bai Ziyue had gone up the mountain alone and killed the 18 Eagle Kings in a domineering manner was too shocking. He didn't dare to show any disrespect. "Call me young Master Bai," Ziyue said calmly. "Yes, young Master Bai." Zhang Zhen nodded repeatedly and then said, "We left one alive just now, and we've already inquired clearly. This time, apart from the Black Wind stronghold, there were also the 18 Eagle Kings from the plains. These 18 Eagle Kings all had the strength of inner force realm and above. There were quite a few third-rate experts among them. Among them, there was even King Sky Eagle. It was said that he had already reached the second-rate expert level. In the plains, he could be said to be a tyrant. Who would have thought that they would all be killed by young Master Bai here? It's really... Do you know who ordered them to do this?" Ziyue interrupted him and asked. "It's said that it's Mount Qilian," Zhang Zhen said with a serious face. "Mount Qilian?" Ziyue was puzzled. He couldn't help but look at the purple-clothed woman who had just walked out of the carriage. He had naturally heard of Mount Qilian. He knew that the Qilian Mountains didn't represent a single mountain, but rather the countless heroes of the Green Forest gathered in the Qilian Mountains. Among them, there were countless experts. Second-rate experts, first-rate experts, and even Xiantian experts. There were many bandits in the Wu country, but very few dared to disobey the orders of Mount Qilian. "Mount Qilian?" The purple-clothed woman nodded. She seemed to have remembered this place. Then, she said to Ziyue, "This time, it's all thanks to young Master Bai. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to deal with." "It was difficult, but there was no other way, right?" Ziyue's eyes flashed, and he nodded silently. Obviously, even if the other party was seriously injured, she still had some tricks up her sleeve. She could easily kill the 18 Eagle Kings and deal with this crisis. Chapter 244. "Miss Qing, you're too courteous. I'm only doing this for myself." Ziyue slowly shook his head and said, "However, I think Miss Qing should also explain who your enemy is. How many people will they send to deal with you?" This time, they sent 18 Eagle Kings. With my skills, I can still deal with them. But next time, if they send a first-rate expert or even a Sciention realm expert, then I won't have the slightest confidence. Although the Sciention pellet is good, I won't joke with my life. If I escape at that time, Miss Qing, please don't blame me. Xiue's goal had always been clear, but he also knew the principle of acting according to one's ability. First-rate experts were fine, but Sciention realm experts were on a different level to him. He didn't think that he could deal with them with his current strength. Even if he used immortal techniques, it would still be difficult. When Zhang Zhen heard this, his body trembled and he anxiously looked at the purple-clothed woman. Compared to Xiue, he had more concerns in his heart. The Qilian Mountain wasn't an ordinary place. There were countless experts. Second-rate experts were normal, but there was no lack of first-rate experts and even Sciention realm experts. Even the head escort of the Four Seas Escort Agency didn't dare to provoke them. Moreover, the Four Seas Escort Agency also belonged to the Lulan faction. If the Four Seas Escort Agency wanted to make a living, they also had to look at the Qilian Mountain's face. This made the pressure on him even greater. As for who my enemy is, I think it's better if you don't know. The purple-clothed woman shook her head and said, As for how many people they will send, I reckon that they will spare no expense. However, I think you don't have to worry about the existence of Sciention realm experts. Those existences cherish their lives very much. As for first-rate experts, young Master Bai, do you think it's so easy to get the Sciention pellet? Moreover, I'm quite confident in my vision. Based on young Master Bai's methods, ordinary first-rate experts might not be your match. As she spoke, a trace of shrewdness flashed through her eyes. Ha, Miss Qing, you must be joking. Xiue's eyes flashed and he chuckled. It's getting late, let's set off quickly. From the fact that the other party was able to send people to ambush us in advance, it can be seen that our position is already within their grasp. After this, it won't be too peaceful. What awaits us will definitely be endless encirclement and pursuit. Originally, Xiue and the others had lost more than half of their warhorses because of the battle. However, after finding the warhorses that the 18 Eagle Kings had left at the entrance of the Langya Valley, they had a surplus of horses. As a result, their speed became even faster because of this. Because there was only one carriage left, Xiue also rode on a tall horse, his body moving up and down with the horse. Beside him, the little black dog's figure was vigorous as it galloped madly. Its speed was not much slower than the horse's, in fact, it was even faster. After all, it was an exotic beast. Compared to a warhorse, it naturally had an advantage. Xiue ignored the excited black puppy. He tightened his legs and sat firmly on the horse, as if he was one with the horse. Then, he focused his attention on his hands. A 7-foot-long bow and 2 crimson arrows. These were the spoils of war from the heavenly Eagle King of the 18 Eagle Kings. This bow should be made from a top-grade exotic beast. It is sturdy and durable. As for these arrows, they were indeed made by an immortal cultivator. There is a talisman sealed within. After it is shot, it will detonate with inner strength. An ordinary second-rate expert would probably not be able to block it. Xiue thought silently. Previously, he was able to block the arrow easily because he relied on the vibrating force of the vibrating blade art to detonate the flame arrow's power in advance. Otherwise, even he would have been in a difficult situation. Then, he put the 2 flame arrows into the quiver. This thing was not very useful to him, but it was indeed a good thing. At least for now, he could use this to intimidate his enemies from afar. Then, Xiue turned his attention to cultivation. The protective technique, Golden Bell Shield. The 4th chapter of the Purple Mansion Creation Technique, Purple Mansion Creation Chapter. Cultivating the Golden Bell Shield was fine. As long as it was maintained, it could be maintained. However, Cultivating the Purple Mansion creation chapter required constant control of inner strength to attack the small meridians in the body. This caused the aura on Ziyue's body to flicker, and its momentum seemed to be somewhat vast. Zhang Zhen and the others felt the aura and looked at him with complicated gazes. Time flowed by as he cultivated in this manner. In the blink of an eye, several hours had passed. Ziyue had also unblocked the meridians between the two main meridians. He was one step closer to truly completing the circulation route map and stepping into the ranks of first-rate expert. At this moment, he let out a long sigh of relief and woke up from his cultivation. No wonder young Master Bai has such powerful strength at such a young age. This diligence is truly admirable. At this moment, a clear voice sounded from within the carriage. Ziyue was slightly startled, as if he did not expect the purple-shirt lady to talk to him. However, he calmly said, cultivation is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you'll fall behind. I know that my strength is insufficient, so I can only rely on cultivation to make up for it. As for my strength, it's actually not worth mentioning. Ziyue slowly shook his head. He was well aware of his own strength. Perhaps he could be considered pretty good among his peers, but his vision had never been above his peers. Xiantian martial Dao, aperture enlightening, or even stronger. This was what he sought the most. The current him was still far from being comparable to those existences. Of course, he did not dare to relax. When he thought up to here, he seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly looked at the purple-clothed woman and asked, Miss Qing, as an immortal master with an extraordinary identity, do you know where I can find a treasure that possesses the innate 5 elements qi? In terms of martial Dao, he was no longer too worried due to the purple-shirt lady's promise of a Xiantian pill. However, in terms of aperture enlightening, he still had no clue. Naturally, he was rather interested in the 5 elements pure yuan technique. There are actually quite a few treasures with Xiantian 5 elements qi. Just treasures with Xiantian water spirit qi include first yuan heavy water, 1000-year ice crystal, geocentric spring water, and so on. However, the places where those things existed were all extremely harsh and vile environments. Although some of them were ordinary, some of them were extremely precious. It will be extremely difficult to find them myself. However, in some large chambers of commerce or some special markets, people will occasionally trade them. It's not impossible to collect all of them. The purple-shirt lady pondered for a moment before she spoke. Because many of these treasures were commonly used by immortal method cultivators and martial practitioners, she did not suspect anything. What kind of place is this special marketplace? I wonder if Miss Qing can tell me the specific location? Ziyue hurriedly asked. This special market is naturally where immortal method cultivators exchange and gather. Well, I happen to have a map of the market. There's no harm in giving it to you. As the purple-shirt lady spoke, her hand moved slightly, and a small jade slip appeared in her hand. This jade slip is a special recording method used by immortal method cultivators. Just press it between your eyebrows and concentrate your qi, and you will be able to read it. However, I have to remind you that there may be some guarantee of safety within the market because there are people guarding it. However, outside the market there are dangers everywhere. It is not a safe place. If you really want to go, you have to make more preparations. The purple-shirt lady tossed the jade slip to him, and then warned him slightly. Thank you for telling me, Miss Qing. I will naturally make more preparations before I go. Ziyue nodded solemnly and said gratefully. Although he did not obtain the specific location of the treasures that contained the 5 elements qi, at least he had a certain direction and would not be at a loss. There's a small town in front of us called Yunsong Town in half an hour's journey. When we reach that town, it means that we are already in the East City County. There are only 7 or 8 days left before we really enter the East City County. Suddenly, Zhang Zhen said with a face full of excitement. We are already in the East City County? Ziwa was stunned, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. There's still a short distance, but we will be there soon. It just so happens that the sky is getting dark. We can stay in Yunsong Town and recuperate. As Zhang Jin spoke, he hurriedly flattered him and quickly rushed forward. Soon, a group of travel-worn people appeared at the city gate of Yunsong Town. What entered their eyes was a slightly dilapidated town. Ziwa made a slight comparison and found that whether it was the population or the prosperity of the town, it was much weaker than Qinghe Town. Soon, they checked into the best inn in the area. Although the environment was not very good, it was better than eating in the wind. Therefore, the group of people seemed to be a little relaxed. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, they returned to their rooms. Ziwa could not wait to take out the storage bag that he had obtained from the immortal Martial treasure house. His mental energy turned into golden needles and constantly pierced them, destroying the restrictive power on the storage bag. After a period of continuous erosion, there was only a thin layer of sealing power left in his storage bag. He estimated that tonight, he would be able to completely erase it and break it open. Naturally, he was looking forward to it. Buzz, 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 Ziwa's mental energy turned into golden needles and continuously fell on the storage bag like dense raindrop. The sealing power on it was being worn down by the golden needles. It was quickly being worn down, and it began to gradually dim. Time passed. Even though Ziwa's mental energy was strong, he gradually felt that it was not enough. However, he already felt that there was only a thin layer of restrictive power left, and it could be broken at any time. Therefore, he was not willing to stop. Finally, Chapter 245. 1. There was a slight tremble. Boom. The barrier formed by the sealing power on the storage bag was like a taut bottle cap that suddenly opened up. The storage bag was opened. Ziwa's heart was filled with excitement. He could not wait any longer and immediately probed into it with his spiritual force. This space is indeed much larger than the one I'm wearing. It's 4 meters square. It's not much smaller than the room I'm in right now. It can also store much more things than the previous one. Ziwa immediately sensed that the space inside the storage bag was much larger than the one he had on him. He couldn't help but feel delighted. Even though he had already guessed that the storage bag would be of a higher grade and the space inside would be much bigger, he was still very satisfied with the confirmation. Then, his gaze landed on the storage bag. There was no doubt that the herbs, pills, and even some rare items had gradually decayed with the passage of time. Under the mixture of various impurities, it formed a kind of pill poison. This kind of thing might not have much effect on inanimate objects, but once it was exposed, it would definitely cause unimaginable harm to him or any other existence that came into contact with it. At this moment, he could also clearly see that in the storage bag, there was a pure black aura that was constantly twisting. It was quietly floating up and down in the storage bag, rolling slowly. Ziwa's mental energy only got a little closer, and a piercing pain immediately occurred. He immediately avoided it like a snake or a scorpion. That's right. This kind of pill poison is a great weapon for sneak attack. Maybe it can also be a trump card of mine. If it's released suddenly, it will definitely cause a huge loss. While Ziwa was shocked, his eyes suddenly lit up. This kind of pill poison was also more powerful as the grade of the spiritual item decayed. The higher the grade of the spiritual item, the more powerful it would be. The storage bag he had on him contained the items of Kuan Yuan, who was at the peak of the 9th level of the Qi refinement realm. But this time, the storage bag contained the items of the immortal martial sect leader. It must be an item that was at the aperture awakening realm or above. The difference in strength between the two could be said to be like heaven and earth. Naturally, there was a huge difference in the grades of the spiritual items and medicinal pills stored. In addition to the brewing time, one was 100 years, while the other was 300 years. It was like a fine wine. Naturally, the longer the pill poison was brewed, the more mellow and powerful it would be. Last time, the pill poison and fiendish aura in old Taoist Kuan Yuan's storage bag was enough to make him dizzy. This time, the pill poison and fiendish aura in the golden storage bag was more than twice as strong. Once released, its power would definitely be terrifying beyond compare. This is. Then, Ziyue looked at the other items, and a trace of excitement appeared on his face. Carefully avoiding the poisonous miasma, Ziyue pulled out an item. Void Spirit Gold Crystal, a top-rate equipment refinement material. It contains a strand of natural gold energy, and it's exactly suitable for me to cultivate the universal pure origin technique. Feeling the weight in his hand, Ziyue looked at the item that was only the size of a fist but weighed more than 1,000 kilograms. He could not help but be delighted. Once the natural gold energy was extracted, this Void Spirit Gold Crystal would also be scrapped and would no longer have the same effect as before. It would become a useless rock. However, at least this meant that he had officially obtained a treasure that contained natural 5 elements chi. It would be a big step forward for him to open the universal pure origin technique and truly begin to cultivate it. The high-grade Dharma artifact Golden Mountain Axe, the top-grade Dharma artifact Golden Spear, and the spiritual weapon seems to be an alchemy furnace, and this one, if it was in good condition, it would definitely be a mid-grade or even a high-grade spiritual weapon. However, it was forcefully severed into 2 pieces. Immediately after, a pile of Dharma artifacts and even spiritual weapons appeared beside Ziyue again. Among them, the Golden Mountain Axe and the Golden Spear were made of extraordinary materials. However, because they had not been used for a long time and had been contaminated by the poisonous qi, they were involuntarily corroded. They needed a long time to refine before they could unleash their full power. On the other hand, the alchemy furnace was half the height of a person and stood on 3 legs. Although the spiritual light was obscure, it was extremely well preserved and faintly emitted spiritual light. Its power was not affected at all. He estimated that as long as he refined it, it would be able to unleash its power. Not daring to let this spiritual weapon be exposed to the air for too long, Ziyue hurriedly put this treasure into another storage bag. Then, he looked at another treasure. It was a ruler. However, it had been completely broken in half. However, even though it had been broken in half, the aura it emitted still made him faintly fearful. He immediately judged that it was not ordinary. He knew that if this weapon was in good condition, it would not be impossible for it to be a mid-grade spiritual weapon or even a high-grade spiritual weapon. It could be said to be extremely powerful. What a pity! Ziyue sighed softly and put it away as well. Although this ruler had lost its original power, the material it was made of was definitely extraordinary. Naturally, he would not give it up. 5 jade scroll eyes, 200 formation discs, 12 formation flags, 3 jade boxes with sealing talismans, and spirit stones. Ziyue went through them one by one. His eyes lit up especially when he saw the jade scroll eyes. As for the formation discs and formation flags, although he had the true explanation of formations on him and knew some simple concepts of formations, he did not know much about how to set them up. As for spirit stones, there were 1,000 inferior-grade spirit stones, 230 middle-grade spirit stones, and 5 superior-grade spirit stones. It was not much, but it was not little either. For him, it was a huge windfall. Ziyue was about to take out the 3 sealing jade boxes when he thought about it and did not do so in the end. There was no other reason other than this place was not suitable. If there were any treasure lights or spirit chi fluctuations, it would attract the attention of certain people. For him, it would not be of much benefit. It would be even more troublesome if there were any leakage of spirit chi like the demon core of the serpent dragon. He decided to wait until he was in an absolutely safe place before opening them. It was more appropriate. Considering the limited space in his storage bag, Ziyue did not take out anything that would not be affected by the poison chi, such as spirit stones, formation discs, formation flags, and jade boxes. Instead, he took out the 5 jade scroll eyes. In comparison, he was naturally more excited about the jade scroll eyes. Detailed explanation of the 36 Earth Malevolent Seals, Heaven Sealing Earth Lock Spirit Gathering Formation, 7 Malevolent True Fire, Immortal Martial True Body, Pill Formula of the Orifice Awakening Pill. Ziyue placed the 5 jade scroll eyes into his glabella and read them one by one. The shock in his heart gradually turned numb. The detailed explanation of the 36 Earth Malevolent Seals recorded the process of the 36 Earth Malevolent Seals in detail. In other words, there were a total of 2,592 ordinary seals recorded in it. As long as one followed the steps, one could fuse them into 36 Earth Malevolent Seals according to the method in it. A Dharma treasure that contained 1 Earth Malevolent Seal could be considered a top-grade Dharma treasure. If it contained 3 Earth Malevolent Seals, it could be considered a spirit artifact. The accumulation of 36 Earth Malevolent Seals could at least raise a Dharma treasure to the level of a mid-grade spirit artifact. It was definitely something that many people dreamed of. The Heaven Sealing Earth Lock Spirit Gathering Formation is a formation used by a mountain sect to gather the spirit chi of heaven and earth. According to this formation, one can gather the spirit chi of heaven and earth and increase it by 3 to 5 times. Coincidentally, there are many formation discs and formation flags in my storage bag. If I use them well, it is not impossible to set it up. However, it will also take time and effort. The 7 Malevolent True Fire is a Dharma spell. It is an extremely powerful Dharma spell that gathers the 7 malevolent spirits of heaven and earth and fuses them into one to form the 7 Malevolent True Fire. It can burn all things. However, with my current skills, it will be difficult for me to master it. At the very least, I will need to be an enlightened immortal cultivator. As for the Immortal Martial True Body, it is a Dharma spell that can fuse Immortal Martial and Martial. It is directly derived from the Immortal Martial Sect's Immortal Martial Tao technique. It also seems to contain the profoundness of fusing Immortal Martial and Martial. Ziyue pondered silently, a look of anticipation on his face. The fusion of Immortal Martial and Martial would definitely produce some kind of miraculous change. As for the final enlightening pill formula, could it be that I have to refine it myself? Ziyue thought to himself as a complicated expression appeared on his face. The ingredients listed on the list were not lacking 1,000-year-old spiritual ingredients, 100-year-old treasures, especially one of the main ingredients. There was also the demonic pill of a certain spiritual demon. There were also many ingredients that he had never heard of before. If he wanted to refine it, just the collection of ingredients would be a huge problem. It would not be so simple. However, at least it can be considered a direction. If it really doesn't work, it's not like I can't refine it. Don't I happen to have an alchemy furnace that has reached the level of a spiritual weapon? Ziyue's face could not help but reveal a look of relief. Overall, he was extremely satisfied with the rewards he had obtained from opening the storage bag this time. To him, this was definitely a bountiful harvest. Not only did he obtain the Golden Mountain Axe and the Golden Spear, but he also obtained the Pill Refining Cauldron and many other Dharma and Spirit artifacts, which were worth 70 to 80,000 Spirit stones. He also obtained a large number of formation plates and flags, as well as a detailed explanation of the 36 Tao seals and a Heaven Sealing Earth Locking Spirit Gathering formation. Most importantly, he had also obtained the 7 Demons Primordial Fire and the Immortal Martial True Body, which could increase his strength. As for the enlightening pill formula, although it would be very difficult to refine it, at least it increased his chances of breaking through to the enlightening realm. He pushed aside the fog that had trapped him in front of his eyes and stepped towards a higher level. Even if there were to be an accident when he went to the Chaoyang sect, he would not be completely helpless. With this thought in mind, Ziyue's gaze suddenly turned. He could not help but squint, and a strange look gradually appeared on his face. He saw that the paper window of the room he was in had opened, and a bamboo tube slowly extended out. Chapter 246. Without a sound, Ziyue appeared by the window. He reached out his hand to touch the hole in the bamboo tube and spat it out with force. Bang! The young man, who had the other end of the tube in his mouth and was about to spit out the smoke, immediately widened his eyes and blood flowed out of his mouth. His mouth exploded. Just as he was about to let out a scream, a thick bewitching mist was emitted from his throat. He immediately felt dizzy and his vision turned dark. His mouth was wide open and he immediately closed it. It was as if even his scream was strangled by the bewitching mist. Then, a hand reached out from the hole in the paper window and grasped his neck with a little force. Crack! The sound of a neck breaking was heard. The young man died painlessly. "You're courting death." Like a thunderclap, Zhang Jin's voice was heard from a room not far away. Then, there was the sound of a knife cutting into flesh. There seemed to be a series of noises coming from other rooms as well. "It seems that I can't rest today." Ziyue sighed and rushed out of the room in a flash. The black puppy howled and also rushed out. Almost in the next moment, Bai Ziyue saw two black-clothed ancient martial art practitioners dashing towards a room at the end of the corridor. That room was the residence of the purple-clothed lady. Bai Ziyue's heart skipped a beat as he quickly chased after them. Boom! The door was blasted open. The two black-clothed assassins broke the door in an instant. However, at the same time, Ziyue had already caught up with them like a ghost. He did not hesitate at all. The saber light was like a black waterfall. Puff, puff. The two black-clothed assassins fell down before they could see the scene in the room clearly. Miss Qing, Ziyue's eyes flashed. The beautiful and pure woman, who looked young but already had a peerless elegance, appeared in front of him. "Get out!" The purple-clothed woman blushed and immediately covered her face with a piece of brocade cloth. Ziyue was a little melancholy, but soon he recovered and said directly, "Immortal Master Qing, it seems that it's not safe here." Boom! The roof suddenly collapsed, and countless rubble fell down. A person with cold eyes and a sword in his hand turned into rays of sword light that flashed in the room. Pung! Beneath the ground, the wooden planks exploded, turning into countless wood shavings. A figure wielding a spear, the tip of the spear shining with a silver light, like a fierce general on the battlefield, directly piercing over. The sudden attack of the two third-rate experts was peerlessly fast. Their coordination was so good that it was as if they had formed a killing blow. Any third-rate expert would find it difficult to defend against the two attacks from above and below, and would die on the spot. However, the person they attacked was not a third-rate master, but a genuine second-rate master. Moreover, he was at the peak of a second-rate expert. His true combat strength was not the slightest bit inferior to a first-rate expert, Ziyue. Tyrant saber art. The long saber slashed out in an overbearing manner, crushing everything in its path. Boom! The expressions of the two third-rate experts, who had a tacit understanding with each other, changed drastically at this moment. They felt as if their attacks had collided with a majestic mountain, unable to shake the other party in the slightest. On the other hand, his arm was twisted by this huge force, and his weapon was sent flying backward, crashing into his chest. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Second-rate expert? The expressions of the two changed drastically. Without thinking, they turned around and fled. Die! Ziyue narrowed his eyes, but the saber light had already rolled up once again. A terrifying momentum pressed down, causing the void to tremble. It seemed to have perfectly combined with Ziyue's long saber. The two had just taken a step forward, but the long saber had already slowly slashed out. Vibrating saber skill. Moreover, it was a vibrating saber skill that had merged with saber force. The night was suddenly lit up. Blood appeared, and two heads soared into the sky. Endless amounts of blood gushed out. Master Bai, Miss Qing, are you all right? When the two corpses fell down, Zhang Zhen and his group of subordinates rushed over. Seeing this, they hurriedly heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "We're fine," Miss Qing said coldly. Ziyue did not say anything. Instead, he twirled the long saber in his hand and directly put it back into the sheath. "That's good. However, there's something wrong. Some of our brothers found that there are people outside the restaurant. I suspect that there are local gangs and even people from the government involved. They're surrounding us." Zhang Zhen's voice suddenly became low. He looked at Ziyue nervously and said, "Master Bai, what should we do next?" "What should we do? Of course, we'll rush out." A cold light flashed in Ziyue's eyes. He took the lead and saw a group of people rushing towards him. He quickly rushed over to kill them. The others followed closely behind. Even the black puppy was incomparably brave and fierce. It swept its paws across quickly and fiercely. Soon, the ground was covered with corpses. Ziyue and the others came to the backyard and quickly took out horses and carriages. "Want to escape? You can't escape." A sinister sneer was heard, and then a skinny old man rushed out quickly. On the other side, an old woman with silver-white hair and an extremely skinny face had cold eyes. She quickly flipped her hand and a cold light flashed out. "Not good. It's the poison sex twin demons, Wu Yan and his wife." Zhang Zhen's face changed drastically. The two of them were not very strong. They were only on par with him and were third-rate experts. However, they were from the poison sect and were very skilled in using hidden weapons. Moreover, they would often smear poisonous substances on their hidden weapons. If they were not careful, even a second-rate expert would have a headache and would not dare to provoke them. Zhang Zhen felt a chill in his heart, especially when he saw the countless silver needles flickering with a cold light shooting toward him. "Is that so?" Bai Ziyue dashed out in an instant. His long saber turned into a huge black light screen. With a series of ding-ding-ding-ding sounds, countless silver needles glittering with cold light appeared on the ground in the blink of an eye. The tips of these silver needles were black and purple. It was obvious that they were stained with extremely terrifying poison. If an ordinary martial artist was pierced, they would die instantly. However, these silver needles did not have any effect. They were all blocked by Ziyue. "Second-rate expert?" The old man's face changed and his body froze. Then, a cold glint flashed in his eyes as he roared, "So what if you're a second-rate expert? There are at least 8, if not 10, second-rate experts who have died at the hands of us. Today there will be one more." He quickly reached for his waist, and a row of small flying daggers appeared in his hand. His inner strength surged out. Clang! 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 One after another, flying daggers shot out like silver ribbons. At the same time, a pitch-black device appeared in the old woman's hand. "Die!" The old woman roared and suddenly opened the black device. In an instant, the countless silver needles emitted the glow of black venom and swept out. Pearflower storm needles. At this moment, everyone was horrified. Even a first-rate expert would have to be careful when facing such a dense burst of poisonous needles, let alone a second-rate expert. No wonder Wu Yan and his wife could repeatedly kill second-rate experts with the strength of a third-rate expert. This hidden weapon was definitely a great killing weapon. "Is this what you're capable of?" Ziyue's tone was calm, and there was a hint of disappointment on his face. Layer after layer of golden bells formed in the blink of an eye and rushed out of his body. There were 6 layers of golden bells, and they were like thick city walls that enveloped him completely. Then, instead of retreating, he rushed out from where he was. Clang! 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 Countless silver needles and flying daggers shot out like a dense rain of arrows. Zue held the long saber in his hand and turned it into a huge black light screen. It blocked almost all the silver needles. Occasionally there were some that slipped through. Even if they hit his golden bell shield, they could not shake it at all. Die! Zue slashed out and the void turned white. The old woman's eyes widened. Her eyes suddenly lost focus for a moment. It was as if her entire mind was being pulled into the long black saber. Then a cold light flashed through the long saber. Ah! She screamed. She only had time to block the attack with the black device in front of her. Then, she was cut into two by the saber. There was a huge gap between a third-rate expert and a second-rate expert. It was almost impossible to cross it, not to mention that Bai Ziyue was not an ordinary second-rate expert. The moment the hidden weapon in her hand failed to hurt Ziyue, her fate was sealed. Moreover, she was only 5 meters away from Ziyue. Protective technique, golden bell shield? The old man gritted his teeth. His heart was filled with fear and disbelief. You killed my wife. I'll kill you. Then, the old man roared. Qi exploded from his body. It was as if he had endless potential. His originally thin and weak figure suddenly became powerful and majestic at this moment. It was as if he had turned from a dying old man into a strong young man in an instant. He reached into his bosom, and a flying dagger instantly shot out. Then, without even looking at the result, he retreated without any regard for his own safety. He ran away. He actually ran away at this moment. Whether it was a pretense or a provocation, it was all a cover-up. The old man's real goal was never revenge. Based on his experience, he naturally knew that Ziyue was powerful. He was not someone he could defeat. Even if he tried his best, he would not be able to defeat him. Even an ant craved for life. He, Wu Yan, cherished his life even more. Therefore, he ran away. He used a secret technique that stimulated his potential to more than double his speed. Interesting. Ziyue narrowed his eyes, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He did not chase after the old man. Instead, he picked up the longbow on his back, took out a flame arrow, and knocked it on the bowstring. Then, he pulled the bowstring to form a full moon. Boom! The flame arrow shot out. Chapter 247. Boom! The flaming arrow streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning, causing the air to explode. Ding! The arrow trembled and exploded violently. In the midst of the whistling sound, a strong flame suddenly exploded. Boom! Ah! Wu Lei let out a loud scream. His entire body was almost pierced through. Under the strong flame, he struggled violently for a few moments before falling to the ground with a thud. He was dead. Let's go. At Bai Ziyue's command, he jumped onto a steed with a leap. Okay, Zhang Zhen seemed to have come to his senses at this moment. He nodded repeatedly and quickly followed. The purple-robed woman looked calm, but she could not help but take a few more glances at him. In the dark night, figures flickered. Perhaps it was because of Ziyue's great power, but no one dared to stop them. In the dilapidated town, even the city walls were broken. The group of people did not waste much energy and rushed out of the city walls, heading towards the East City County. The sky was bright. Ziyue and his group of 10 people stopped on a small path. They had abandoned the carriage. Even the purple-robed woman was riding on a white horse. She looked very stable. Compared to when Ziyue first met her, she looked much better now. She was not like before, coughing and spitting out blood from time to time. Therefore, in order to avoid possible pursuers, they abandoned the carriage with obvious wheel marks, and all of them began to ride on horses. Naturally, their speed increased a lot. However, the number of pursuers did not decrease. The ground was littered with corpses. There were more than 10 corpses scattered around. Evidently, they had just gone through a battle and killed the invading enemies. Master Bai, something is wrong. Previously, we were slowed down by the carriage and were traveling on the official road. We were an obvious target, and it was normal that we would be discovered and intercepted. However, now that we have started to take the small path and changed directions several times, they still caught up with us easily. This does not make sense, Zhang Jin said with a serious face. Something is wrong. Ziyue nodded and looked at the people on the ground. This was the third wave of attackers they had encountered after leaving the town. Although these people were not strong, not even one of them was in the internal force realm, and the strongest was only at the peak of internal refinement, so they were easily killed by them. However, it did make them feel extremely impatient. As a result, his speed was greatly affected. Is there a mole? In the escort agency, a martial artist who had reached the inner force realm asked tentatively. This man was also one of the escort leaders. His name was Dong Jingwu, and he was an expert in using giant axes. His mountain-splitting axe technique was extremely swift and fierce. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression changed, and they couldn't help but feel bewildered. That's impossible. Our brothers know each other very well. Their families are all living in the Four Seas escort agency. It's impossible for them to betray us. As for young Master Bai, that's even more impossible. The reason we were able to escape this time was all thanks to young Master Bai. Zhang Jin quickly shook his head and denied it. I think I know the reason. Ziyue suddenly spoke. He lifted his head to look at the sky and said, Look at those two eagles above us. Have they been hovering above us for too long? That's right. I've seen traces of those two eagles since this morning. It's almost afternoon now, and those two eagles are still here. It must be because they're watching us, someone in the group said excitedly. Immediately, everyone's expression froze. But soon after, they frowned again. Even if we know that those two bastards are watching us, there's nothing we can do. They're too far away from us. The lowest one is 3,000 feet, and the highest one is more than 5,000 feet. Zhang Jin immediately shook his head and said in distress. If we don't get rid of those two bastards, we'll definitely be attacked by an endless stream of assassins. But now Dong Jingwu's face was also filled with helplessness and frustration. I can make a move, but once I do, my aura will leak out, and it'll definitely attract even more trouble. Monsters, ghosts, anything is possible. Although I've recovered some of my strength, I can only use a portion of it. If we encounter some powerful beings, it'll be even more troublesome. Of course, if there's really no other way, I'll give it a try. As long as there aren't any overly powerful demons nearby, it shouldn't be too dangerous. The purple-clad woman was silent for a moment before she spoke. No need. Just leave it to me. Ziyue shook his head and took the longbow hanging on his back. This bow is naturally a good one. However, it can only support an arrow for 800 meters before it runs out of strength. Moreover, the two eagles above us aren't simple at all. They're clearly eagle kings that have undergone bloodline evolution. Even if the Sky Eagle King of the 18 Eagle Kings that we encountered earlier were to make a move, it would probably be difficult for him to kill them. Zhang Jin looked at the longbow in Ziyue's hand and couldn't help but shake his head. Naturally, it wasn't that he hadn't thought of using a bow to kill the two eagles. However, 3,000 feet was a distance of more than 1,000 meters. It was too far and too high. It was impossible to kill them with a bow. Even if Ziyue relied on his strength that was far superior to the Sky Eagle King, he could shoot more than 1,000 meters. However, the true test of archery wasn't just the distance. More importantly, one's eyesight and accuracy were required. He had seen Ziyue's palms before. They were as white as jade. He definitely wasn't an expert who had specially trained in archery. Just this point alone was enough to make him shake his head. Moreover, these two eagles were eagle kings that were extremely vigilant. Even if he managed to shoot one of them, the other would definitely escape or rise to a higher altitude. It wouldn't be of much use at all. There was also disbelief in the eyes of the other people. They naturally believed in Ziyue's strength. However, archery was completely different from martial arts. Let's give it a try. If it really doesn't work, it won't be too late for immortal Master Qing to make a move. Ziyue chuckled and didn't mind. He then took out an arrow. A flame arrow. This was the last flame arrow in his hand. He didn't feel any heartache as he knocked the flame arrow on the bow. Zhang Zhen and the others sighed when they saw this. How was this technique different from a newbie's? Previously, when Ziyue killed Wu Yan with a single arrow, they could already tell that he didn't rely on his archery skills to succeed. It was the power of the flame arrow itself. As for being able to hit the target with a single arrow, it wasn't surprising at all. It was only a distance of tens of meters. Even an ordinary person would be able to hit the target, let alone Ziyue, whose strength had reached the peak of the second-rate expert. However, it was completely different this time. A distance of more than 1,000 meters, and 2 Eagle Kings at that. Ziyue's face was solemn. The inner strength in his body surged out. Not only did it merge with the flame arrow, but it also spread out in the longbow in his hand. Pull, pull. It was like a full moon. Under the powerful pull, even the bow made creaking sounds as if it would break at any time. His gaze then fell on the 2 eagles that were constantly soaring in the sky. The 2 eagles were considered huge. When they spread out, they were at least 7 to 8 meters long. However, they were more than 1,000 meters above the ground. In the eyes of others, they couldn't help but appear very small. Sometimes they spread out, sometimes they converged. They were always hovering around the ground. A pair of eagle eyes coldly stared at the ground. The moment Ziyue pulled the bow and arrow, they let out a cry as if they were disdainful. Now's the time. Ziyue held his breath. The inner strength in his body instantly surged. The layer of red light on the flame arrow became even more obvious. Bang! Ziyue's hand loosened. In an instant, the flame arrow was shot. Boom! The void exploded. The air was turbulent. It was extremely fast. This arrow had already surpassed the sound barrier. Whoosh! Only then did the 2 eagles realize that something was wrong. They desperately flapped their wings, trying to avoid it. However, it was too late. The flame arrow arrived at the moment when the 2 eagles passed by each other. Boom! The raging flame spread out in an instant and directly engulfed the 2 eagles. Their feathers were almost burned out in an instant. The scorching temperature kept burning. Together with the exploding arrow, it was like flying needles that shot at their bodies. The 2 eagles died in an instant. Then, they fell from the void. They hit the target. 2 birds with 1 arrow. Only then did Ziyue let out a sigh of relief. His face was full of excitement. They hit the target? Zhang Zhen's mouth was wide open. His eyes were full of disbelief. How could it be? Could it be that after one's strength increased, one's archery skills would also become more powerful? But why was there not much difference between his archery skills when he was still at the stage of outer practice and inner practice? The other people's faces were also full of shock. Then, their eyes were immediately full of admiration. Originally, they were full of admiration and respect for Ziyue's strength. However, at this time, Ziyue's extraordinary archery skills, which could kill 2 birds with 1 arrow from 1,000 meters away, immediately made them admire him very much. Even Miss Qing couldn't help but take another look at him as her eyes wandered around. In his heart, he was somewhat surprised by the endless means that Wang Chong had, but he was also somewhat curious. Ziyue had a panoramic view of everyone's eyes. However, his face was calm. Although he hadn't really practiced archery, his eyesight had reached an extraordinary level because of the magic instinct formed by the spirit eye's skill. Not to mention 1,000 meters away, he could see clearly even from 5,000 meters away or even 10,000 meters away. In addition, his spirit was strong and his spiritual sense was sharp. If he had enough strength, naturally, even if he hadn't deliberately practiced archery, he could kill the Eagle King from 1,000 meters away. Although it was partly due to the power of the flame arrow itself, it was not something that an ordinary person could do. Even a first-class expert couldn't do it. Chapter 248. Alright, let's clean up. Following this, Ziyue's eyes flickered as he said calmly, "The three groups of people who intercepted us weren't strong. They were probably trying to slow us down. I'm guessing that there must be some experts behind us who haven't arrived yet. Let's leave while their eyes are shot out." Yes, let's go. Zhang Zhen nodded his head and ordered everyone to get on their horses. Haha, you're only running now? We've already eaten them. Just at this moment, an extremely deep and resounding cry that seemed to be able to shake the heavens suddenly sounded. Shit. Everyone's expression changed as they turned around. A few miles away, a red-clothed old man, who was much taller than an ordinary person, stepped on the top of a tree. He was using his qinggong to rush over. It's Yang Jingtian of the tiger-roaring forest. It's Yang Jingtian of the Qilian mountain. Zhang Zhen roared as his face turned pale. At this moment the others felt their hearts skip a beat. The joy they felt when Bai Ziyue killed 2 eagle kings with a single arrow instantly vanished. They could not help but feel endless fear and despair. A first-rate expert. Even if they were confident in Ziyue's strength, they knew that the difference between a first-rate expert and a first-rate expert was like an insurmountable chasm. Miss Qin couldn't help but frown. Then, she revealed a helpless and determined expression. She sighed and said, "Young Master Bai, escort leader Zhang, I might have to go back on my promise to you. What's going to happen will happen, and I can't avoid it. You guys go first, I'm not satisfied that I didn't get the Xiantian pellet." Ziyue interrupted her and said, "You guys go first, I'll catch up with you later." What? The purple-clothed woman looked at Bai Ziyue in shock. She naturally understood the meaning behind his words. Maybe my strength isn't as strong as this tiger-roaring forest, but I'm confident that I can survive against him. You guys go first, I'll catch up with you after I get rid of him. After saying this, Ziyue no longer hesitated and turned his horse around. No matter how strong he was, how could he be stronger than a 9th-layer qi refining cultivator? Can you really stop him? The purple-clothed woman looked deeply at Ziyue and couldn't help but ask. Although I am determined to obtain the Xiantian pellet, I will not play with my life. Ziyue chuckled and confirmed again, I can't block it, but it won't be difficult to escape. Alright, if you can't keep up with us this time, I will stay in the East City County for 10 days. During this period, as long as you mention my name to the Chun clan, I'll definitely come to see you and give you the Xiantian pellet. The purple-clothed woman was silent for a moment before she said, My name is Fan Qingyu. Then, she patted the reins, got off the horse, and rushed out in an instant. Go! Zhang Zhen heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly roared. The other people's ashen and despairing expressions immediately relaxed. They glanced at Ziyue gratefully and hurriedly followed. Fan Qingyu. Bai Ziyue narrowed his eyes as he watched them leave. Then, he was slightly startled. He didn't expect the black puppy to be so obedient and stay where it was. Then, he looked at the rapidly approaching expert, Yang Jingtian, who was roaring like a tiger in the forest. None of you can escape. Yang Jingtian let out a long roar, like the roar of a tiger king in the mountains. Under the roar, the leaves rustled and fell. It was obvious that he had a terrifying sound wave technique, which was very powerful. Noisy! Ziyue snorted. Without hesitation, he patted the horse's back and rushed out. With the help of his lightness skill, he quickly rushed towards Shi Yan. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were close to each other. You're courting death. Yang Jingtian snorted and slashed down with a long golden saber. The void trembled and the air swirled violently. The light of this blade was scorching hot and powerful. Even the sun hanging in the sky seemed to dim at this moment, no longer as dazzling as it was before. It's not certain who will live and who will die. Ziyue roared and swept out his divine black saber to meet the attack. Domineering saber art. Clang. There was an earth-shattering sound and sparks flew in all directions. The two figures were instantly thrown back. Each of them crashed into a large tree before stopping. Then, with an even faster speed, they rushed out from their original positions. Clang. 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 Ziyue made his move. He performed the tyrant saber art, tremor saber art, and various saber techniques as he wished. Yang Jingtian's saber skill was also fierce and violent. Perhaps in terms of subtlety, it wasn't as good as Ziyue's saber skill, which had reached the peak and could perfectly display its power. However, Yang Jingtian, who had been a first-class expert for 10 years, had a much thicker and more solid inner energy. His strength was also due to his tall stature, reaching 8 feet. He was born with great strength and was slightly stronger than Ziyue. Therefore, in a short period of time, the two of them were evenly matched. Puff, puff, puff. As the two of them fought, the commotion caused was huge. Trees that required a person to wrap their arms around were unable to withstand their attack. As long as they were crushed, the trees would collapse in an instant. Many craters were left on the ground as their saber chi blasted them open. Good, good, good. You dare to face me alone. You do have some skills. However, if that's all you have, you'll definitely die. Today, I'll let you know the difference between a first-rated expert and a second-rated expert. Yang Jingtian looked at Ziyue in surprise. He was surprised by his opponent's age, and even more so by his strength and skills. He felt a little pressured. However, Yang Jingtian was still too young and his cultivation level was slightly lower. When Yang Jingtian attacked, he saw some stagnation in Yang Jingtian's movement. Yang Jingtian immediately felt relieved and was full of confidence. As his throat moved, his entire neck more than doubled in size. A terrifying and shocking aura immediately spread out from his mouth. It's time to end this. Ziyue raised his eyebrows. He guessed that Fan Qingyu and the others must have escaped by now. He no longer had any scruples. Just as he was about to use his celestial technique to kill them, his heart skipped a beat. He reached into his bosom, and a gold-lined pouch appeared in his hand. Without any hesitation, his mind energy surged. Then, he quickly escaped without hesitation. Furthermore, as he fled, layers upon layers of golden bells appeared with a loud rumble, completely protecting his entire body within. Puff, puff, a thick black mist that almost condensed into a solid substance instantly spread out. Elixir poison filthy chi. Shockingly, this black mist was precisely the poisonous baleful chi that he'd obtained from the storage pouch in the immortal martial treasure vault. Roar! A loud roar turned into layers of light waves. It was as though a real tiger king was roaring in the forest. The sound waves were so powerful that they rushed toward Ziyue in the blink of an eye. It was also at this moment that Yang Jingtian finally used his soundwave technique, the Tiger Roar Thunder technique. A loud explosion took place, causing the leaves on the surrounding trees to fall to the ground. The powerful sound wave collided with the golden bell, and passed through it in the blink of an eye. The sound wave attack was strange and powerful. Even the protective golden bell shield could not block it. Ziyue's expression changed. He felt a slight vibration in his ears. It was as if there were golden needles pricking his eardrums. It was only when he started to circulate his inner force that the situation eased. On the other hand, Yang Jingtian was about to take the opportunity to charge at Ziyue with the Tiger Thunder Roaring technique in order to kill him. Suddenly, he felt a dense black fog shrouding him. Yang Jingtian let out a blood-curdling scream. His internal energy that was protecting his body was easily corroded. Under the cover of the thick black fog, he instantly felt a piercing pain. His vision turned black and the world around him started to spin. "I'm going to kill you," Yang Jingtian roared. He swung his saber as if he wanted to disperse the poisonous fog. His bloody face was filled with hatred. Ziyue did not reply. He had already recovered from the tiger roaring thunder technique. He then calmly dodged the saber aura. His mental energy surged. A spiritual art was being prepared. Stunned spirit spike. It was impolite not to reciprocate. Without a sound, a spiritual attack was launched. Yang Jingtian let out a scream. The aura on his body dissipated. It was as if his consciousness was about to leave his body. Ziyue rushed out. His black god saber turned into a black streak and slashed across the sky. Whoosh! Above Yang Jingtian's head, which was soaring into the sky, his pupils were dilated. He seemed to be at a loss. Soon after, he was pulled into the endless darkness by an invisible black hand. Huff huff! Ziyue panted slightly. He was secretly alert. It seems that sound wave attacks are the same as mental energy attack. They are both weak points in my defense. In the future, I have to be careful when I encounter martial artists or immortal cultivators who have mastered these two types of attack. I have to deal with them as soon as possible. I have to nip the danger in the bud. This time I was careless. Also, the poisonous fog is very powerful. It's just that it's too scattered. It only delayed Yang Jingtian for a while. It didn't achieve the effect I expected. With that thought in mind, Bai Ziyue could not help but make some plans. Soon after, he searched Yang Jingtian's body with familiarity. He found a golden saber, some silver, some pills and a book lying quietly in his backpack. Ziyue raised his eyebrows. He did not expect Yang Jingtian to come all the way to Mount Qilian with a secret manual. Tiger roaring thunder technique. A hint of joy immediately appeared in his heart. He was very interested in this sound technique. He felt that if this sound technique was combined with his stun spirit spike, it would definitely produce a wonderful change. He was looking forward to it. Now that he had unexpectedly obtained a cultivation technique, he was very happy. Chapter 249. Returning to his original spot, Ziyue looked at the horse that was bleeding from its 7 orifices and frowned. This sound wave attack is indeed strange and powerful. Even an expert of the same level would be affected if he used it suddenly. Ordinary creatures like horses would naturally find it even more difficult to resist. Although he was surprised, Ziyue was not too surprised. Having experienced the sound wave attack himself, he naturally knew the power it contained. Although the horse was almost 100 meters away from the battlefield, it could not escape the fate of being severely injured and unable to move. But now, without a mount, Bai Ziyue's gaze shifted and he suddenly smiled. The black puppy, whose mouth was covered in bird feathers, had just eaten its fill from the 2 eagles shot down by Bai Ziyue. Suddenly, it shuddered and stopped where it was in a daze, as if it had an ominous premonition. "Come here," Ziyue called out. The black puppy hesitated for a while and did not move. It deliberately turned its head and stared into the distance, as if there was something nearby that attracted its attention. Suddenly, it sniffed and turned its head again. A blood-red meatball suddenly appeared in Ziyue's hand. Blood coagulation pill. The black puppy's eyes lit up. The blood coagulation pill contained a large amount of blood essence. It was pure and delicious and had always been its favorite. However, looking at Ziyue's smiling face, the black puppy's rich experience made it detect a hint of a conspiracy. It quickly raised its head and squinted its eyes. "Not enough? How about 2? Ziyue tempted. Previously on Snake Mountain, he had used the blood coagulation technique and collected at least 100 of them. The black puppy's eyes lit up and its mouth twitched. It took 2 steps forward and suddenly seemed to have thought of something and stopped again. "How about 3? Ziyue flipped his hand again, and 3 blood coagulation pills the size of a baby's fist took up a large portion of his palm. Little Black's mouth opened even wider as saliva flowed out of it. His doggy eyes narrowed slightly as a look of bliss appeared on his face. However, it did not move. It wanted more. That's all. I'll go on my own. Ziyue pretended to sigh regretfully and gently closed his hands, blocking the 3 blood coagulation pills. Seeing this, the black puppy panicked and quickly ran over. A minute later, the black puppy happily swallowed the 3 blood coagulation pills. Suddenly, its body stiffened as it felt a weight on its back. Immediately, it turned its head slightly, and its slightly slanted dog eyes revealed an incomparably bitter expression. Today, Lord Dog was defeated. This was all a trap. Set off. Ziyue patted its head. The black puppy whimpered pathetically and growled, as if it was complaining about the unfairness of Ziyue's deal. Immediately, it was suppressed by another slap from Ziyue. Then, it quickly chased forward with a look of grief and anger. After all, it had evolved into a high-level exotic beast. The black puppy's body had long surpassed the limits of an ordinary dog. It was like a calf that was a few months old. Its limbs were stable, strong, and powerful. Naturally, it had no problem carrying Ziyue's weight. At full speed, its speed was 2 to 3 times faster than a horse. In addition to its incomparably sensitive sense of smell, Ziyue was not worried about not being able to catch up to Fan Qingyu and the others. At high speed, all kinds of scenes flashed past. However, with Ziyue's strength, he could really adjust his body's center of gravity as he wished and did not have to worry about it. As such, his body was extremely stable even when he was sitting on the back of a speeding dog. As such, Ziyue thought for a while, and couldn't help but take out the Tiger Roaring Thunder technique and read it directly. Then, he couldn't help but show a hint of surprise on his face. The secret manual was actually densely packed with many insights and explanations. Some of them were unique and immediately explained some of the questions that had just arisen in his mind. It wasn't until he flipped through half of the secret manual that the insights and explanations began to thin out. At the same time, he quickly understood that the Tiger Roaring Thunder technique was divided into 3 levels. The first level was Tiger Roaring, the second level was Thunder, and the third level was Tiger Roaring Thunder. It seems that Yang Jingtian is actually a research-type martial artist even though he's tall and mighty. Besides his cultivation, he would also record his experiences in detail. This would explain why he would carry this secret manual with him at all times. It's a good habit. Ziyue nodded silently, affirming his actions. And judging from the progress recorded in this secret manual, Yang Jingtian should have only mastered the first level of the Tiger Roaring Thunder technique and just started cultivating the second level. However, the power of the first level is already so terrifying. Once the Tiger Roaring Thunder technique is completed, its power will be really terrifying. Maybe he can really achieve a situation where one roar can directly kill someone of the same level? As he thought of this, he became more interested in this secret manual and started to read it again. This time, he was much more meticulous. Combining it with Yang Jingtian's experience, he quickly came up with his own understanding of it. Fan Qingyu and the rest were riding on their horses and galloping wildly. However, each of them had a solemn look on their faces. The oppressive atmosphere made everyone hold their breaths involuntarily. It was as if they were afraid that their breathing would break some kind of strange mood. As a result, everyone could only hear the galloping sound of the horses. All of a sudden, a tiger's roar came from afar. Everyone's expression immediately changed. Master Bai should be fine, right? Then, a slightly hoarse voice was heard. Fan Qingyu frowned and didn't say anything. Should be fine. Someone answered hesitantly. Even he didn't believe what he said. Tiger Roaring Thunder Forest's Yang Jingtian, ranked 7th in the Qilian Mountain. He has been a first-rated master for 10 years. His strength is comparable to that of our 4 Seas Escort Agency's head escort. His sound skill, Tiger Roaring, can be heard for 100 miles. If an ordinary person is within 100 meters of him, he may even be shocked to death. Master Bai is very strong, but he is only at the peak of the second-rated master. There is always a gap between him and a first-rated master. Moreover, Yang Jingtian is not an ordinary first-rated master. One of the escort leaders, Dong Jingwu, said in a low voice. Don't make wild guesses. With Master Bai's strength, even if he can't defeat him, he can definitely escape unscathed. Zhang Jin said in a low voice. But Dong Jingwu was about to refute when he suddenly saw Fan Qingyu, who was at the front, turn her head and look behind her. His heart skipped a beat and he quickly turned around. His expression relaxed and a trace of surprise appeared on his face. Behind them, a young man in white was sitting on the back of a huge black dog with a calm expression. He was rapidly approaching them. Master Bai is back. Everyone's face immediately revealed a trace of pleasant surprise. Of course, there were also some who faintly showed a trace of worry. Soon, the black puppy was right in front of them. Only after Bai Ziyue called out to it did it slow down. Master Bai, are you all right? Fan Qingyu could not help but ask. Will Yang Jingtian catch up with us? Someone else asked with a worried look. I'm fine. Ziyue smiled calmly and said, As for Yang Jingtian, he probably won't catch up with us. Why? Dong Jingwu quickly asked. Ziyue smiled and did not speak. Everyone's face suddenly showed a trace of awe and they could not help but mutter in their hearts. Could it be that Master Bai killed Yang Jingtian? But how was that possible? Ziyue was strong, but at best, he was at the peak of the second-rated master's martial arts realm. Although there were many cases of second-rated masters defeating first-rated masters in Jianghu, they were at most new first-rated masters whose realms were not stable and their strength had not improved because they had just broken through. Yang Jingtian, on the other hand, was a veteran first-rate expert who had been in this realm for 10 years. Moreover, he had mastered the strange and powerful sound skill, Tiger Roaring Thunder skill. He was definitely not a new first-rated master. As these thoughts flashed in everyone's mind, they looked at Ziyue with even more respect. Even the mysterious Fan Qingyu couldn't help but reveal a trace of seriousness in the depths of her eyes. Soon, the group was on their way again. Perhaps it was due to the fact that Old Eagle, who was keeping an eye on Bai Ziyue and the others, had been slain. Thus it was difficult for the other party to track them down. Perhaps Bai Ziyue's act of killing Yang Jingtian of the Roaring Tiger Forest had deterred some of them, or perhaps. Therefore, in the next few days, they did not encounter any danger or assassination, which was rare. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. During this period, although Ziyue had been hurrying along like the others, his mind was completely immersed in cultivation. For him, no matter if it was a quiet and safe environment, or a bustling street, or even when the wind was whistling and he was hurrying on his way, he was able to immerse himself in cultivation in the shortest amount of time possible. In these 5 days, he had not made much progress in his cultivation of the Purple Mansion creation technique. However, in the cultivation of Tiger Roaring Thunder skill, he had made considerable progress. Deep in his throat there was a force brewing, wanting to gush out, but it was suppressed by him all the time. When he could no longer suppress it and let out a roar, it meant that he had officially mastered this sound skill. He estimated that it would not be too long. In addition to the Tiger Roaring Thunderclap technique, he also organized and analyzed his various martial arts and even Dharma spells. In a short period of time, he seemed to have undergone a metamorphosis. In the depths of his eyes, there was a light of wisdom and wisdom. Also, there are only 8 days left until the optimization of the attributes panel is completed, and there is only 1 day left until we enter the East City County. Ziyue was silent, but his heart was filled with anticipation. Chapter 250. The sun was shining brightly, and even the forest was hot and dry. Martial artists like Ziyue, Zhang Jin, and Dong Jingwu, who had cultivated their inner force, were still fine. The other martial artists, who had cultivated their inner force and blood, were exuberant. Under the scorching sun, they felt even hotter. Almost everyone felt withered, not to mention the horses beneath them. Even their breaths seemed to be boiling hot. "We'll reach the East City County in half a day. Let's work harder," Zhang Jin urged. The others tried to work harder, but they soon became dispirited. The black puppy stuck out its tongue. It was also unbearably hot. By now, it had silently accepted the fact that it had become a mount. Of course, the price was 3 blood coagulation pills a day. Ziyue was not stingy about this. Soon, the group of people finally passed through the official road that spanned across the mountain forest. Then, a large green field leisurely appeared in front of everyone. Even though their bodies were still hot and dry, everyone could not help but feel a sense of comfort in their hearts. At this moment, Ziyue also woke up from his cultivation. Just as he was feeling relaxed and happy, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He shouted in a low voice, "Wait, something's wrong." In the field, people wearing straw hats and dressed like farmers were scattered around. On both sides of the official road, there were also some people sitting under trees. They seemed to be taking a rest. Everything seemed sparse and normal. However, Ziyue was born in a mountain village. He had been the commander of the guards in the scorching sun gang. He had seen many farmers doing their work and naturally knew the difference. Not to mention, these farmers were all strong and strong. Their eyes shone brightly. It was obvious that they had practiced martial arts. How could they be ordinary farmers? Yang Zhen and the others also quickly pulled on the reins. They looked a little surprised. All of a sudden, the farmers who had been scattered all over the place, as well as the mountain people on both sides of the official road, had a drastic change in their expressions and vigor. They instantly stood up, and with a single step, a large amount of straw fell to the ground. They quickly drew out the weapons that they had hidden and rushed forward. Then, they saw an old man carrying a sickle walk up from behind them shakily. His skinny figure was slightly stooped, and he coughed slightly. It seemed that his health was not too good. However, when Ziyue saw the old man's vast and powerful aura that was as deep as the sea, his expression instantly changed to one that was incomparably grave. Xiantian realm. He took a deep breath, and a bitter expression appeared on his face. In the end, he still ended up encountering an expert of this level. Even though he was very confident in his own strength, he was not certain that he could win against such an expert. However, if it's just escaping, Ziyue narrowed his eyes, but he did not act rashly. Zhang Zhen and the rest sucked in a breath of cold air. Their faces instantly became incomparably ashen, and dense despair surged out from the depths of their eyes. A Xiantian expert. They had never imagined that they would actually encounter a Xiantian expert who would intercept them. It was over. They were doomed. At this moment, they even gave up struggling, and their bodies stiffened. The hot weather seemed to be unable to disperse the coldness in their hearts. Immortal Master Fan, you've kept me waiting for a long time. If you hadn't come, I would have suspected that something had happened to you all. The old man's mouth opened, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth as he smiled. If I'm not mistaken, you should be the deadly Sickle Kai Sun, who ranks 3rd among the 13 peak masters of Mount Qilian. It seems that Su Lianyu has indeed paid a heavy price to invite a Xiantian expert like you. However, have you ever considered whether you can bear the consequences of attacking me? Fan Qingyu said coldly as she rode on her horse. Consequences? I don't have many years left to live, so why should I care about the consequences? After killing you, I'll get the vitality elixir and recover from my injuries. The world is so big, where can't I live happily? Kai Sun sneered and said. In that case, I have nothing more to say. Fan Qingyu looked at Ziyue calmly and said, Next, I only trust you. Don't let anyone come within 3 meters of me. Just send me safely to the Chen family. Ziyue was stunned. While he was puzzled, he heard Kai-sun yell, "Kill!" He immediately rushed out from where he was, and the hatchet in his hand turned into a silver stripe, slashing out quickly. Before the blade fell, the aura that seemed to condense the entire world caused everyone's heart to sink in an instant. The others beside him also attacked at this moment. Their eyes were fierce, vicious, and filled with a bloodthirsty light. Fan Qingyu's eyes suddenly narrowed, and a cold light flashed in them. Her white hand slightly moved, and a small, sparkling sword leisurely rushed out of her body. In an instant it turned into a stream of light, shooting toward Kai-sun. Puff! The sword light collided with Kai-sun's hatchet, and the hatchet was instantly scattered. Then, the remaining force fell on the hatchet, which was sharp enough to split mountains and rocks. Clang! With a clang, the hatchet, which was made of better material than a treasured saber, was broken from the middle. An enlightened celestial master? How can it be? No. Kai-sun's face changed greatly and he shouted in shock. His eyes were filled with disbelief, and then he turned around and fled without thinking. However, the sword light was simply too fast. Even after breaking his weapon, its speed did not slow down at all. It had truly reached the limit of what could be seen with the naked eye. Puff! With a tremor, Kai-sun, who had reached the Khanate realm, did not have time to escape. His head was pierced through, and then the flying sword turned again. Puff! Puff! Two martial artists who had reached the level of second-rate master and above fell to the ground one after another. Fan Qingyu was about to attack again when her face turned pale and blood flowed out of her mouth. At the same time, a thick and alluring fragrance spread out from her body. She had no choice but to summon the flying sword back into her body. Run! The expressions of the group of assassins dressed as farmers changed drastically. They retreated at an even faster speed and scattered like birds, desperately fleeing in all directions. Almost everyone's eyes were filled with deep fear. What kind of person were they besieging this time? An enlightened celestial master? How could it be an enlightened celestial master? However, even their peak master, Kai-sun, who had reached the Khanate realm, was killed easily. If it was not an enlightened celestial master, what was it? At this moment, they wished they had more legs to escape as fast as possible. Kill! Zhang Zhen and the others were stunned at first, but soon they were all excited. We won? Although it was hard to believe, the Khanate realm martial artist lying on the ground could not be faking it. He was so excited that his body trembled. They hurriedly attacked the assassins. One of the assassins, in his panic, actually rushed in front of Bai Ziue, and beside him was the seemingly weak and powerless Fan Qingyu. As if he had discovered something, a trace of ecstasy appeared on his originally fearful face. He raised his saber and hurriedly slashed at Fan Qingyu. Scram! Bai Ziue's eyes widened. The sound waves that he had been suppressing in his throat for the past few days suddenly burst out at this moment. Roar! It was as if the Tiger King, who was the king of the forest, was patrolling his territory when he suddenly discovered an intruder. That roar exploded with a bang. Tiger Thunder Roaring Technique, Level 1, Tiger Roar. It contained strands of inner strength. Like a light wave, it instantly invaded the warrior's head. Chi! In an instant, the martial artist's eardrums were shattered. His mouth and eyes were crooked. He was stunned by Ziue's sound wave attack. However, he did not hesitate. He slashed his saber and killed the martial artist. Then, he hurried to Fan Qingyu's side. He lifted her arm and helped her up. She was clearly weak and limp. "Are you okay?" "I'm not." Fan Qingyu looked exhausted and said weakly, "Hurry up and take me away. My blood and aura contain a special kind of energy that is extremely attractive to ghosts and evil spirits. We have to leave before my aura spreads. Only when we enter the East City County and the Chun family's formation will we be safe." "Okay." Ziue's heart skipped a beat. He did not hesitate and hurriedly helped her sit on the black puppy's back. Then, he sat behind her and supported her slightly. "Excuse me." After saying that, Ziyu called out to Zhang Zhen and the others, "Escort leader Zhang, don't chase a cornered enemy. Let's go." "Okay." Zhang Zhen complied and hurriedly returned. Then, he mounted his horse and quickly followed behind. Smelling the fragrance coming from Fan Qingyu's body, Ziyu hesitated for a moment and asked, "Are you really an enlightened immortal master?" "Yes. However, I was ambushed by an enemy not long after my breakthrough. Although I was severely injured, my strength was also greatly reduced. I need some time to recover. I was able to kill Kai Sun with a single strike because he was careless. More importantly, I have to thank you for escorting me all the way here. It allowed me to recover some of my strength." Fan Qingyu explained. "In that case, what exactly is the reason why you attract ghosts and evil spirits?" Bai Ziyu asked as his heart stirred. If it worked, he could use this method to hunt ghosts and obtain spiritual energy. The soul-luring incense could only attract low-level ghosts. It was useless to him now. "It's actually a special constitution. If possible, I would rather not have this constitution and just be an ordinary person." Fan Qingyu's eyes revealed a trace of weakness and pain as she spoke. Ziyu nodded silently. He knew that she must have encountered many difficulties before she grew up with this constitution. However, he was disappointed that he could not use this to attract ghosts and evil spirits, and kill them to obtain spiritual energy. Chapter 251. A few hours later. The number of carriages and pedestrians on the official road gradually increased. In the distance there was a huge city that looked like a giant beast resting here. The tall city walls stretched for dozens of miles and were densely packed with holes. It looked as if it had been weathered, adding a sense of ancientness to it. On the city walls, soldiers were lined up. Some of them were young generals in armor, looking very intimidating. They could vaguely see that there were many ancient and magnificent buildings within the city walls. The city gate was 80 feet tall and extremely wide. It looked like a giant beast opening its mouth and swallowing people. East City County City. 4 ancient and weathered words were deeply engraved on the city gate, allowing everyone to look up and see. Ziyu and the others rode on horses and big black dogs and followed the flow of people silently into the city. Only at this moment did Zhang Zhen, Dong Jingwu, and the others truly let out a sigh of relief, revealing a carefree and relaxed smile. They were safe. They were finally safe. They didn't have to worry about being attacked on the way. They didn't have to worry about being assassinated when they slept in their rooms. They also didn't have to worry about being attacked by second-rate, first-rate, or even Khanate experts. Along the way, they ate and slept in the open, experiencing too much. There were quite a few times when they felt the great ups and downs of life. It truly was extremely exciting. Most importantly, the benefits that Fan Qingyu had promised them were about to be fulfilled. Since they were willing to risk their lives to complete the escort mission, they naturally couldn't refuse the benefits. Now they were finally going to be safe. Would Fan Qingyu go back on her words? They were worried about this at first, but after confirming that she was a cultivator who had enlightened her apertures with an immortal method, they completely let go of their worries. For them, such a person's status was really high. It was impossible for her to go back on her words because of some money and treasures. Ziyu's eyes also showed a hint of excitement. They had successfully arrived at the East City County City. Next, he only needed to send Fan Qingyu to the Chun family to receive the Khanate pellet. The Khanate pellet could help first-rate experts to break through to the Khanate realm. It was extremely precious. Although he had the mystical attribute panel, he wasn't confident that he could use it to break through to the Xiantian realm. After all, the Violet Kingdom creation art could only be cultivated to the peak of a first-rate expert. As for Xiantian techniques, one had to break through to the Xiantian realm before they could be cultivated. There was a gap between the two that had to be broken through on their own. The Shinto pill was the best spirit pill that could help people break through this barrier. It was Ziyue's first time in Dongqing County. What he saw was clean roads, spacious streets, and bustling places. Wujiang County could not compare to this place. There were a lot more people who practiced martial arts among the crowd. There were scholars, peddlers, and servants. As they walked, they seemed to have a sense of confidence. They held their heads high and were full of vigor. In order to make it easier for Fan Qingyu to rest and recuperate, Ziyue and the others rented a carriage and went straight to the Chun family. Unlike the Lin family and the Di family of the Sky Spirit County, which were located outside the county city, the Chun family was located in the center of the East City County city. After entering through the city gate and passing through more than 10 streets, Ziyue and the others spent almost 2 hours to truly step into the Chen family's territory. At the gate of a huge mansion that occupied almost 1,000 acres, several burly men dressed in the Chen family's servant uniforms stood there. Their eyes were bright and their faces were filled with a sense of superiority. When they saw the carriage parked in front of their house, they realized that it was not the familiar one. The style was also somewhat ordinary. Even the horses pulling the carriage were not mutated beasts or horses with a trace of mutated beast blood. They immediately looked over with a kind of natural deterrence. "Who are you people?" One of them stepped forward and asked in a deep voice. I am Zhang Zhen from the Four Seas Escort Agency. I am an escort leader." Zhang Zhen cupped his hands nervously. Although he had heard of a place like the Chun family before, he had never come into contact with it. Now that he saw it, he did not dare to come into contact with it. This was because he suddenly realized that the weakest of the servants guarding the Chun family's gate was an inner force realm martial artist. The one who spoke to him was actually a third-rate expert who was not any weaker than him. "What is the Four Seas Escort Agency doing in my Chen family's residence?" the head servant asked with a serious expression. Escort leader Zhang, let me do it." Ziyue patted Zhang Zhen's shoulder. Then, he took out the purple gold token from his bosom and said in a clear voice, "I have something important to discuss with the Chen family's patriarch." Purple gold token, the head servant trembled. He was extremely shocked and hurriedly looked at Ziyue with respect and reverence. He said repeatedly, Please wait for a moment. We will get someone to inform." In just a few minutes, a group of people came out of the Chen family's residence and warmly welcomed them in. In a courtyard, peach blossoms bloomed leisurely. Occasionally, the petals of the peach blossoms would drift down and fall into a pond at the side. The water in the pond was so clear that one could see the bottom. There were some fish swimming in it. Ziyue sat under a peach tree. His gaze could not help but appear somewhat deep. The Chun family is indeed the #1 cultivation family in the East City County. The depth of their resources is shocking. It had been 3 days since Fan Qingyu had been sent to the Chun family. 3 days ago, an elder of the Chun family who called himself Chun Xianzhong came out and respectfully received Fan Qingyu. He agreed to Fan Qingyu's request and gave Ziyue the Xiantian pill and other benefits as promised. Both parties were delighted. Ziyue and the others were also arranged to stay in the Chun family's residence. Of course, the purple gold token in his hand was also taken away. In these 3 days, the Chun family did not forbid him from moving around. He could feel the depth of this cultivation family's resources. He had met more than one first-rate expert, and there were also many second-rate cultivators. Even when he met the elder of the Chun family, he could vaguely feel that the elder's aura was as deep as an abyss. It was not inferior to Kai Sun's, or even stronger. Obviously, he was a cultivator who had reached the Xiantian realm. All of this gave him a deeper understanding of the Chun family's resources. However, what made him depressed was that 2 days ago, Zhang Zhen and the others had already received their benefits and left happily. However, there was still no news of the Xiantian pill that Fan Qingyu had promised him. When he asked about it, she only said that the Xiantian pill could only be taken out from the treasury with the approval of the Chen family's patriarch. It was said that the Chen family's patriarch was out visiting friends and would only return in a few days. Could it be that she is unwilling to part with the Xiantian pill, so she refused? Fan Qingyu also did not show up these few days. Bai Zhua frowned as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. I'll wait for 2 more days. If there is no news, then I'll prepare for the worst. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the Lin Mansion is abundant, which is beneficial for my Violet Mansion creation art. Perhaps I can connect the 12 standard meridians and 8 mysterious meridians to form a complete cultivation technique diagram before the status panel finishes upgrading, and officially enter the realm of a first-rate expert. He took a deep breath and dispersed the trace of arrogance in his heart. Third uncle, are we really going to give the Xiantian pill to that person? In a courtyard, a middle-aged man looked at an old man with white hair and turbid eyes. Although the old man looked old, his aura was extremely strong. The faint aura that he emitted shocked the middle-aged man. The old man was a Xiantian realm cultivator. He was the elder of the Chen family, Chen Xianzhong, who had received Zhua and the others. As for the middle-aged man, his name was Chen Jixian. Although his aura was not as strong as Chen Xianzhong's, there was a layer of spiritual light surrounding his body. He was actually a cultivator. His cultivation had reached the 8th level of the Qi refining stage. He was not weak and was a direct descendant of the Chen family. If he had the chance to break through to the aperture enlightening stage, it was not impossible for him to become the patriarch of the Chen family and take charge of the Chen family. That's right. We have to keep our promise. Fortunately, the patriarch is not back yet. Otherwise, we would have taken the Xiantian pill from the treasury and given it to Mr. Bai. Chen Xianzhong nodded affirmatively. Deep in his eyes there was a trace of envy. Although he was a Xiantian realm cultivator, he knew that the Chen family was a cultivation clan. Even Qi refining stage cultivators could extend their lifespan. They could easily live up to 100 years old, and the longest could reach 150 years. If they broke through to the aperture enlightening stage, they could live up to 250 years. As for him, as a Xiantian realm cultivator, his heart and lungs were injured in an accident. He was only 87 years old, but he was already old and senile. At most, he would die of old age in 40 years. But I've already promised Uncle Zhong to get a Xiantian pill for him. Now there is only one left in the treasury. It will take another 3 years to replenish it. Uncle Zhong has been working in the Chen family for 30 years. He has reached the peak of the first-class expert stage for more than a year. He will soon be 80 years old. When a cultivator reaches 80 years old, the life force locked in by practicing martial arts will begin to dissipate, and he will almost lose the possibility of breaking through to the Xiantian realm. I can't break my promise and let him lose the opportunity to break through, right? Chen Jixian was anxious and hurriedly said, "Fool! Do you know who he saved? Since Master Immortal Fan personally promised him, we must do it well. Otherwise, if he asks about it, who can bear the blame? It's true that the Xiantian pill belongs to our Chen family. But with just one Xiantian pill, how many cultivation clans would rush to give it to Master Immortal Fan? How can a man who reached the peak of the first-class expert stage at 70 years old be compared with him?" Chen Xianzhong glanced at Chen Jixian. He didn't want to offend him too much, so he said, "At least in the Chen family, the Xiantian pill must be given to Mr. Bai. Once he leaves the Chen family, no one will be able to stop him. I remember that he is only a second-class expert. It will take a long time for him to reach the peak of the first-class expert stage and take the Xiantian pill to break through to the Xiantian realm." Hearing this, Chen Jixian's body shook and his eyes lit up. He said, "I know. Thank you for your reminder, third uncle. I don't know anything. Also, don't let the slightest bit of news spread. Otherwise, if Master Immortal Fan hears about it, no one can bear the blame. Chen Xianzhong shook his head and said, Nephew understands. Chen Zhixian nodded his head, stood up, and left excitedly. Chapter 252. In a spacious courtyard there was a coiled grapevine. Under the shade of dense grape leaves and clusters of thumb-sized purplish-black grapes, the grapevine was very shady. Under the shady grapevine, an old man in short combat attire with arms as thick as thighs was holding a teapot and gulping down a large mouthful of tea. Suddenly, a figure walked over from afar. This figure was the escort leader of the Four Seas Escort Agency, Zhang Zhen. You were looking for me, head escort? Zhang Zhen bowed slightly and asked. Tell me more about Immortal Master Qing and young Master Bai. The head escort of the Four Seas Escort Agency, Invincible Iron Fist Wang Jing, raised his head slightly and said, Yes. Although he was a little puzzled, Zhang Zhen still said, Immortal Master Qing's identity is unknown, but one thing is for sure. She must be an Aperture Enlightening Realm cultivator. Her status is also very honorable. A Khanate Realm Elder of the Qin clan is very respectful to her and even fawns over her. A Khanate Realm Elder? That should be War Maniac Qin Xianzhong. Unfortunately, he met his match in the end. A punch from a few years ago injured his lungs and damaged his foundation. If it wasn't for his identity as a cultivator from the Qin clan, he would have been beaten to death. As Wang Jing spoke, he finally remembered that he was only a first-rate expert and was not qualified to comment on this Khanate realm cultivator. He smacked his lips and said, Tell me more about young Master Bai. What's his name and how strong is he? This young Master Bai is called Bai Yong and is at the peak of a second-rate expert. However, in terms of combat strength, he is far superior to ordinary second-rate experts. He single-handedly killed the 18 Eagle Kings of the Plains District, including King Tianying, who was already a second-rate expert. The Poison Sect's twin demons, Wu Yan, and his wife also died one after another at his hands. The most shocking thing was that we encountered Yang Jingtian of the Roaring Tiger Forest. Although we didn't see the results of the battle and he didn't say anything when we asked him, he was the one who caught up with us in the end. Therefore, we all suspect that young Master Bai is a first-rate expert. Yang Jin said with a solemn face. Just thinking about the battles along the way made him sigh in amazement. A first-class expert? Wang Jing narrowed his eyes. Yang Jingtian's strength wasn't any weaker than his. In fact, the other party's sound technique was hard to defend against. Wang Jing might be at a disadvantage if he were to face it head-on. With this thought in mind, his face turned serious. However, when he thought of the news he had heard, he quickly asked, What about the Xiantian pellet? Does Mr. Bai really have it? Head escort, where did you hear this from? Zhang Zhen's expression changed. Even though he already knew that the news would leak out sooner or later with so many people around, he was still shocked to hear it from the head escort. You just need to tell me if he really has a Xiantian pellet or not. Don't forget that you're a member of the Four Seas Escort Agency. Wang Jing narrowed his eyes and said softly, Yes. Immortal Master Qing directly proposed to give young Master Bai the Xiantian pill in front of the Qin clan's Xiantian experts, and the Qin clan agreed on the spot. Based on the respect the Qin family has for Immortal Master Qing, I believe they won't go back on their word. Therefore, the Qin clan will definitely give him the Xiantian pellet. Zhang Zhen clenched his teeth and continued, however, I advise the head escort not to set his sights on the Xiantian pellet. Not to mention young Master Bai's extraordinary strength, who is suspected to have killed the first-rated expert, Hu Shaolin Shan Yang Jingtian. Even the Qin clan won't allow their Xiantian pellet to be snatched by others. He knew what the Sciention pellet meant to a first-rated expert, but he could only bring up the Chun clan in hopes that the head escort would have some misgivings and not act rashly. In the depths of his heart, he actually admired and respected Ziyue. Naturally, he didn't want to see the head escort get into a conflict with the other party. Of course I know that. Wang Zheng's eyes flickered as he said calmly. Young Master Bai, our clan head invites you in. In the courtyard, a woman with the appearance of a maidservant walked over and said, Lead the way. Bai Ziyue opened his eyes from his meditation and said calmly. He didn't expect that he would receive an invitation from the Chun clan's clan head in the afternoon, while he was muttering to himself in the morning. However, he didn't know if the clan head would be willing to give him the Sciention pellet. With this thought in mind, he followed the maidservant and walked towards the Chun clan's guest hall. The Chun clan's courtyard was indeed worthy of being the #1 cultivation clan in the East City. Every step was a different color, and every place was a different scenery. There were all kinds of rockery, flowing water, and even the location of the trees were all unique. It made people feel relaxed and happy when they walked in. During his free time, Ziyue also read the records of the true explanation of formations. Although he wasn't proficient in formations, he had a good eye for formations. He could also see that there were some ingenious formations set up in this beautiful courtyard. Under the effects of these formations, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Chun clan immediately became more abundant. It was extremely beneficial for the martial artists and cultivators who lived here. In addition to the formation that gathered spiritual qi, there were also some killing and trapping formations hidden in the garden. It was very extraordinary. Suddenly, Bai Ziyue's footsteps came to a halt. His eyes flashed as he immediately saw a cultivator in azure robes standing under a willow tree on the other side of the lake. The cultivator was tall and had an extremely ruddy complexion. He was currently staring at Bai Ziyue. His eyes were as calm as a lake, but there was a trace of bone-chilling coldness in them. The hostility was very obvious. Miss Yen'er, who is that? Ziyue confirmed that he had never seen that person before and asked the maidservant who led the way. It's our Chun clan's guest elder, Mr. Zhong Bailey. It is said that Mr. Zhong has broken through to the peak of the first-rated expert level and is about to break through to the Sciention realm. He is one of the strongest first-rated experts in our Chun clan. Yen'er followed Ziyue's gaze and was slightly surprised. She bowed to the old man and explained in a low voice. Is that so? The peak of the first-rated expert level? Ziyue's eyes flashed and he had a rough idea. Soon, Ziyue was led to a spacious living room by the maidservant. In the living room, Ziyue saw Chen Xianzhong, who had received them last time, and Fan Qingyu, who had obviously recovered a lot. At this time, Fan Qingyu did not use a brocade cloth to cover her face, so her peerlessly beautiful face fell into his eyes again. Even though he had seen it once, it still made his breath quicken. But soon, he shifted his gaze to the thin middle-aged man in the living room. He was obviously unfamiliar, but his aura was deep and profound. He was even more powerful than Fan Qingyu. Obviously, he was the Chun clan's master, Chun Fengchen. I am Bai Yong. Greetings to the Chun clan's master, Chun Xianzhong, and Master Fan. Ziyue cupped his hands slightly and greeted them. Master Bai, you are here. Only the clan's master has the right to take something as precious as the Sciention pill out of the treasure vault. Only now that the clan's master has returned, he was able to take out the Sciention pill. Now, in front of the clan's master and Master Fan, we will officially hand over the Sciention pill to you. Consider it as fulfilling Master Fan's promise to you. After seeing Ziyue, Chun Xianzhong quickly approached him and handed over a jade box with a solemn expression. Sciention pill. Ziyue's breath quickened at this moment. He was slightly surprised by the Chun clan's straightforwardness, but he still took it without hesitation. He ignored Chen Xianzhong's slightly unpleasant expression and opened the box. A light golden pill the size of a child's fist lay quietly on top of the jade box. The Xiantian pill is a second-grade pill. The difficulty of refining it is only slightly lower than the bottleneck-breaking pill and the orifice-enlightening pill, which are also second-grade pills. This pill is light golden in color and does not contain any qi. It is definitely a Xiantian pill, so Master Bai does not need to worry. Fan Qingyu smiled faintly and explained. Of course I trust Master Fan and the Qin clan. I'm just curious. Ziyue did not feel embarrassed. He took another glance at the pill before closing it and holding it in his hand. He then looked at Fan Qingyu and said, "Now we're even." Fan Qingyu nodded silently. For some reason, she felt a little disappointed. "Young man, you're quite talented at such a young age. Are you interested in joining my Qin clan and becoming a guest elder of my Qin clan?" The Qin clan's master, Qin Fengqian, glanced at Ziyue and suddenly said. Chen Xianzhong was slightly shocked, and he seemed to have never imagined that the patriarch would suddenly extend an invitation to Bai Ziyue. But when he swept his gaze towards Fan Qingyu, he came to a sudden understanding in his heart. Since he was going to do a favor, he had to do a good job in order to get the most benefit. At this moment, Fan Qingyu was obviously more concerned about Bai Ziyue. If Bai Ziyue could join the Qin family, this concern would definitely fall on the Qin family. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. No, it should be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. In this way, the Xiantian pill would not be wasted. In the future, even if Ziyue reached the Xiantian realm, the Qin clan's strength and resources would be increased. Fan Qingyu frowned. She had guessed Qin Fengqian's intention. However, she just looked at Ziyue and did not say anything. "You're too kind, Clan Master Qin. However, I'm used to being idle. I'm afraid I'm not suitable to be bound by the rules of the Qin clan." Ziyue smiled and refused directly. Although the Qin clan was the #1 immortal clan in the East City County, its strength and resources were quite extraordinary. If he was just an ordinary second-rate master, it would be a good choice. However, his goal was not only to reach the Xiantian realm, but also to reach the Enlightenment stage or even higher. The Qin clan's resources were not enough. Chapter 253. Most importantly, he was still an outsider. Even if the Qin family's resources could help him reach the Xiantian realm and reach the Aperture Opening realm, they would never give him the resources. Naturally, he knew what choice to make since he was well aware of this. Qin family head tried to persuade Ziyue again, but he gave up when he saw that Ziyue was not interested. His original intention was not to rope in Ziyue, but to please Fan Qingyu. A second-rate master was not worth it for him to rope in. Since Bai Ziyue refused, he naturally wouldn't force him. "Since I've achieved my goal, I'll take my leave. I hope you can forgive me for disturbing you during this time." Ziyue said goodbye when he saw that the topic had changed. Although the Qin family's environment was comfortable, it was not his residence after all. Plus, there were many masters and spies in the family. He could feel that some people were spying on him, which made him very uncomfortable. He had to endure it for the Xiantian pellet. Now that he had the Xiantian pellet, he would not stay for long. "Send someone to see Master Bai off," Chen Xianzhong said politely with a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Master Fan, I'll take my leave." Ziyue looked at Fan Qingyu one last time, nodded and turned to leave. Fan Qingyu opened her mouth but did not say anything. After all, they were from 2 different worlds. Instead of worrying about each other, it was better to forget about each other. At the gate of the Qin family's mansion, Ziyue looked back at the huge mansion behind him and left calmly. The East City County was a big city with a large population. Naturally, it was very prosperous. Ziyue walked in the city with his eyes flickering. Behind him, the black puppy followed, appearing to be a little quiet. "Now that I have the Xiantian pellet, There are no obstacles in my martial arts cultivation. Next, I just need to wait for the status panel to finish upgrading and reach the peak of the first-rate master. Then, I can use the Shention pellet to break through step by step. On the other hand, although I reach the 9th level of the Qi refining stage first, it won't be so easy to reach the aperture opening realm from the 9th level of the Qi refining stage. Just like how a first-rate master would break through to the innate stage, from the 9th level of the Qi refining stage to the aperture opening stage, one would also need to rely on external forces. The bottleneck breaking pill and the aperture awakening pill were two types of pills that were publicly acknowledged to be able to help Qi condensation cultivators break through to the aperture awakening stage. Although there were also people who succeeded in breaking through without the help of these two spiritual pills. However, when one person succeeded, there were at least 100 people who fell in the process of breaking through. At least 90 people died on the spot. In a situation where there was no difference between the two breakthroughs, he naturally knew what to choose. Safety was the most important thing. Therefore, I must do my best to plan for the bottleneck breaking pill and the enlightenment pill. Coincidentally, I also obtained a pill formula for the awakening pill from that storage bag. If there's no other way, it's not like I can't use it. In addition, I must master the 5 directions pure yuan technique, which can increase the success rate of breaking through by 30%. Presently, I already possess a treasure that contains metal element Shention Qi, and I still lack 4. As Ziyue thought to himself, he stopped in his tracks. Without hesitation, he found a carriage and called out, "Let's go to the Star Pavilion." During this period of time, he had already asked around. In the entire East City County, the most prosperous street was Phoenix Street, and it was said that the Star Pavilion was the one with the most treasures. The Star Pavilion was located on Phoenix Street. The black puppy could be used as a mount, but in this county with so many people coming and going, it was better not to attract too much attention. After all, he did not lack money. Alrighty. With a shout, the carriage began to move. Half an hour later, Ziyue appeared at the entrance of the Star Pavilion. The lofty and magnificent loft was far superior to other places. Looking in from the entrance, it wasn't very luxurious, but there was a sense of simplicity that made one's mind calm. One couldn't help but wander around before stepping in. The art of array formation? Ziyue vaguely sensed something, but did not pay too much attention to it. He ordered the carriage driver to wait at the entrance, and let the black puppy sit in the carriage before he stepped in. "Young master, please." Soon, a servant with a clean face came up to him and greeted, "What do you want, young master? Our Star Pavilion doesn't have everything, but as long as it's something that other shops have, we have it. What they don't have, we might have it too." "Oh? You talk big. Do you have the Shention pill here?" Ziyue smiled and asked tentatively. "Yes." The servant was slightly nervous, but his face was calm as he said, "Every 3 years, our Star Pavilion will organize an auction, and the Shention pill is usually one of the highlights. It has appeared in our auction 5 times in a row. But if you want the Shention pill, you may have to wait for 2 years. Because the next auction will be held in 2 years. Is that so?" Ziyue raised his eyebrows in surprise, but he was not too disappointed. His intention was not to get the Shention pill. He already had the Shention pill. "Then, do you also have the treasure that contains the Shention Qi? What you need should be some kind of treasure. I'll take you there. Let our shopkeeper explain it to you." The servant wiped his sweat and said hurriedly. The Shention pill was famous, and it was a top-grade treasure used by first-rate experts. He had heard of it, but he did not know much about other treasures. Ziyue nodded and quickly followed the manservant to the 2nd floor. Soon, he saw a middle-aged shopkeeper with a goatee on his face. His strength was not low, and he was at the level of a third-rate expert. "This is our shopkeeper Wu." The servant said hurriedly. Nice to meet you, shopkeeper Wu. Do you have the treasure that contains the Sciention 5 elements Qi in your star pavilion? Ziyue did not beat around the bush and asked straightforwardly. What kind of treasure do you need? Treasures that contain the Sciention 5 elements Qi can be divided into 5 types, and there are many treasures with different characteristics among them. For example, in the water attribute, there are first essence heavy water, ice profound congealing, millennium ice marrow, and many other materials with different characteristics. This kind of heavenly treasure was actually more useful for immortal spell cultivators. Among the cultivators, only Sciention realm cultivators who practice the corresponding Sciention cultivation technique or forge weapons with it can use it. Shopkeeper Wu was knowledgeable and spoke frankly with assurance, as if he knew a lot about it. Ziyue was delighted and hurriedly said, It doesn't need to be a special kind, as long as it contains the Sciention Qi. May I know how many kinds of treasures you have? What do you have? His confidence in collecting all 5 types of treasures with Sciention Qi increased by a few notches. There's only one kind, and it happened to be sent by an immortal master some time ago. It's called First Essence Heavy Water. It's a small bowl, but it weighs 50 kilograms. Here, it's only 500 kilograms. As shopkeeper Wu spoke, he carefully took out an iron kettle from the counter below and said, The First Essence Heavy Water is shockingly heavy, and it's not something that can be carried by ordinary things. Even pig iron can't do it, as it can be easily torn apart by the strong pressure. This iron kettle is made of purple gold profound iron, and it's shockingly heavy, so it can be barely carried. It can also be considered a treasure. Ziyue held his breath and felt the special Sciention water's spiritual qi coming from the kettle. He was delighted and said straightforwardly, I'll take it. How much is it? Silver? Shopkeeper Wu shook his head and said, This kind of treasure is actually not something that can be bought with silver. We're taking it for the auction in 2 years. If not, we'll use other means to trade with some immortal masters. Therefore, we only accept spirit stones. Of course, silver can also be exchanged for spirit stones. As long as you go to the immortal pavilion, you can usually do so. 10 taels of gold and 100 taels of silver can be exchanged for 1 lower-grade spirit stone. However, generally speaking, there will be a certain premium. 12 taels of gold or 120 taels of silver for 1 lower-grade spirit stone is the normal price. If young master wants to buy it, this first essence heavy water will be priced at 1,000 lower-grade spirit stones. You can give us 120,000 taels of silver. 120,000 taels of silver. Ziyue raised his eyebrows and frowned. He had silver and was not lacking in it. There was a secret room in the immortal martial treasury that stored a lot of gold and silver. He only took a portion of the extremely valuable items. However, the gold and silver took up a lot of space, so he put them all in the storage bag. It was not convenient to take them out for trade. However, other than gold and silver, he also did not lack spirit stones. Since he had entered the Rising Star Pavilion, he had naturally brought enough money and had also considered this aspect of the situation. Therefore, he directly took down the beast's skin bag on his back. Whoosh! It poured out in an instant. 5,000 taels of gold, 5,000 taels of silver, and 1,000 spirit stones appeared in front of everyone at the same time. In an instant, shopkeeper Wu was stunned. He opened his mouth wide in disbelief. He had seen many rich people take out 100,000 taels of silver or even 1,000,000 carriages of silver at one time. However, they usually sent servants to guard them and transport them to and fro for trade. There were very few people who carried gold and silver like Ziyue. Most importantly, there were spirit stones in it. No more, no less, 1,000 spirit stones. Other than this first essence heavy water, I wonder if shopkeeper Wu knows of any other treasures that contain innate 5 elements qi? Ziyue reached out to take the iron kettle made of purple gold meteoric iron. He felt the weight in his hand and a trace of joy appeared in his eyes. Then, he continued to ask, "No. In the entire East City County, only the Starry Pavilion has the foundation to take out such a spiritual item that contains innate chi. Other shops can't have it. With their size, they can't take out enough silver or spirit stones to buy such a treasure," shopkeeper Wu said confidently. Chapter 254. He did not doubt shopkeeper Wu's words. The Star Pavilion was the most famous shop in the East City County. Naturally, it was related to the Chun family. It was precisely because of this that they had the confidence to shout out that there was only one person who was good, and there was no one else who was good. Oh right, there is one. The vice-sect leader of the Vitality sect, Situ Ming, wields the blazing heart scorching spear. It is said that the spear was made from fire golden crystal. This fire golden crystal is a spiritual item that contains fire attribute Xiantian Qi. However, the blazing heart scorching spear is his treasure. He will never let it go. As if to show his knowledge, shopkeeper Wu suddenly opened his mouth to speak. Vitality sect? Ziyue asked doubtfully. It seems that young master has just arrived in the East City County. The Vitality sect is one of the few top martial arts sects in the East City County that has Xiantian realm warriors. Sect leader Ji Haoran is a Xiantian realm warrior. Vice sect leader Situ Ming is also a mid to late first-class expert. His strength is extraordinary. After he forged the blazing heart scorching spear a few years ago, he became even more powerful. It is said that he killed Wu Ping, who was also a mid to late first-class expert, not long ago. He is extremely powerful. Shopkeeper Wu said with a slight sigh of admiration. Thank you for telling me. Bai Ziyue expressed his gratitude, but his brows were slightly furrowed. After thinking for a while, he gave up on the idea of asking Situ Ming for the blazing heart scorching spear. Although he was confident, he was more cautious. If it was not necessary, he would not easily provoke warriors above the Xiantian realm. When he walked out of the Star Pavilion, the coachman quickly greeted him respectfully and said, "Young master, where are you going next?" "Let's find a better inn," Ziyue said. He looked around the Star Pavilion and squinted his eyes. It seems that the Xiantian pellet on me has indeed caused some people to waver. Bai Ziyue sighed softly, but he did not really care. As long as it was not someone above the Xiantian realm, no one would be able to snatch anything from him. He was even looking forward to more people making a move. At that time, he would be able to kill all those who dared to make a move. However, there is no rush. Right now, the most important thing for me was to wait for my stats window to level up. There were only slightly more than 3 days left before the optimization was completed. Once I finish leveling up, my strength will increase again. It won't be too late to meet them then. Ziyue thought to himself as he boarded the carriage. In an antique room, the two of them sat opposite each other. One of them was an old man with grayish-white hair. His arms were extremely thick and strong, as if they could run a horse. He was the head escort of the Four Seas Escort Agency, the invincible Iron Fist Wang Zheng. The other person had a fair complexion, but his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. He seemed to be a middle-aged man. He looked at Wang Zheng and asked calmly, "Brother Wang, you don't visit a temple without a reason. May I know the reason for your visit?" Brother Ming's reputation has been resounding recently. On my way here, I've heard at least 3 people talking about your battle with Wu Ping. Brother Ming's reputation of the blazing heart-burning spear will spread out of the East City and the entire Wu country soon, Wang Zheng said. Seeing that the other party was unmoved, he calmed himself down and said, "I have a business deal. I've thought about it for a long time, but I've decided to rope you in. I wonder if Brother Ming is interested?" I wonder what kind of business deal it is that even the invincible Iron Fist can't solve it? Situ Ming asked curiously. The other party's martial realm isn't strong. He's only at the peak of a second-rate expert, but he has the record of killing a first-rate expert. I'm sure you've heard that the tiger roaring mountain forest's Yang Jingtian died in his hands. He probably has some hidden methods. It's also because of this that I thought of Brother Ming to be safe. It's him? Situ Ming's body trembled. The tiger roaring mountain forest's Yang Jingtian wasn't weak at all, especially his sound technique. Situ Ming wouldn't be able to defend against it. After thinking about it, he decided to reject. Not to mention the fact that the other party was able to kill a first-rate expert, Yang Jingtian. He must be extraordinary. But the fact that two first-rate experts killed a second-rate expert wasn't something to be proud of. It didn't match his current status. Therefore, he pretended to sigh regretfully and said, "The sect leader also said that I've been in the limelight for too long, so it's not good for me to fight again. I'm afraid I can't help Brother Wang anymore." Is that so? I didn't think that Brother Ming wouldn't even be interested in a Xiantian pellet. If that's the case, then I'll take my leave. Wang Zheng's expression didn't change, and his voice was extremely calm. He then stood up, as if he was about to leave. Wait, what did you say? Xiantian pellet? Situ Ming was shocked, as if he couldn't believe it. He immediately said, "Where is he? When will we do it? How will we split it?" In an exquisite and spacious room, a calming incense was lit. The dense smoke from the incense turned into a white mist that resembled a coiling dragon, diffusing in the room. Then, it was involuntarily inhaled by the nose of a figure on the edge of the bed. That figure was Ziyue. Under the effect of the calming incense, his mind was even more tranquil. Only the tyrannical aura faintly emitted from his body showed that he was in the midst of cultivation. After a long time, he slightly opened his eyes, and a trace of divine light flashed in his eyes. After such a long time of cultivation, my internal force circulation diagram is finally going to be completely unblocked. Now I only need to unblock the remaining two mysterious meridians, and I can truly complete the internal circulation cultivation, officially stepping into the ranks of first-rate experts. Most importantly, I'll be able to break through to the first-rate expert level with my own ability. Taking a deep breath, Ziyue was slightly excited. All along, he had relied on the status panel to break through his strength. It was extremely rare for him to break through on his own. This made him feel a sense of regret in his heart. But now, he was going to make up for this regret. Tonight is the time for me to break through. With this thought in mind, he closed his eyes again and controlled the internal force in his body to continuously rush towards the small meridians between the conception meridian and governing meridian. Once, twice, thrice, as if he did not know exhaustion, the internal force in his body was quickly consumed. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, suddenly, he felt that the blockage was slightly loosening. Suddenly, his heart trembled. Now is the time. Finally, following Ziyue's low shout, the internal force in his body gathered and took shape, turning into a sharp knife, and rushed out again. Boom! It was like a torrential river, violently surging, rushing straight down. The last layer of obstruction was broken. At this moment, the 12 principal meridians and the 8 mysterious meridians were finally officially connected. In an instant, the internal force in Ziyue's dantian rolled up, and like a torrential stream, it immediately left his dantian and quickly flowed along the 12 principal meridians and the 8 mysterious meridians. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. In the beginning, it was somewhat difficult and dry. However, as time passed, the internal force accumulated, and the pushing force increased greatly. It was like a hot knife through butter, and within the turbulent flow, there was a sense of gentleness. His meridians were widened, and the speed at which the internal force flowed also increased. It was as if it carried a great force. Half an hour later, Buzz. Ziue's body shook violently, and the internal force officially completed its first internal cycle. In an instant, a series of crackling and rattling sounds came from Ziue's body. At this moment, his bones, flesh, and skin seemed to have undergone a metamorphosis from the inside out, and they trembled rapidly. Strands of sweat, blood, and filth were continuously discharged from the deepest part of his body. Meridians cleansing. In fact, Ziue had not undergone such a metamorphosis for a long time. However, this time, he had undergone a metamorphosis from a second-rate expert to a first-rate expert. It was not only the changes in his body. Within his body, the Violet Kingdom Creation Art's internal force in his dantian was refined the moment it completed its first internal cycle. From the original 10 strands, it was refined to the point of 1 strand. Immediately, this strand of internal force flowed into his dantian. It was completely different from the original internal force, and it was completely incompatible. However, he could clearly feel the purity and strength of this internal force. This is the reason why a first-rate expert is far superior to a second-rate expert. By circulating such pure internal force, the power of the same move will naturally increase. Ziue thought to himself, and hurriedly circulated his internal force, which flowed along his shoulder and into his arm. He immediately discovered that when the same move was used, although the total amount of inner strength did not seem to change, because the inner strength had been refined, the total amount of inner strength contained in the move had increased by 10 times compared to before. Of course, because his body had just broken through, his arm could not withstand such a powerful force. Therefore, this time, the amount of internal force that flowed into his arm was twice as much as before. Strike out! Boom! There was an explosion in the air, and the air in front of the fist print was violently pushed away, forming a faint vacuum. Its power had increased by 2 times as much as before. A first-rate expert is indeed powerful. When my body is able to withstand the full circulation of internal force, my strength will definitely increase by at least 10 times. Even now, because of the purity of my internal force, my strength has more than doubled compared to before. Ziue compared himself to himself, and a joyful smile appeared on his face. This time, he had completely relied on his own strength to break through. This sense of accomplishment made him even more excited and moved him. After a while, he calmed down slightly and began to cultivate again, stabilizing his current state. The internal force continued to circulate, forming an internal cycle, and purifying his own internal force. After a long while, Ziue opened his eyes slightly. The path of cultivation is one of tension and one of relaxation. For the internal force in my body to be completely purified, it will probably take some time to cultivate, so there is no rush. Taking advantage of this time, it is also time for me to complete the things that were inconvenient to complete before. Ziue thought to himself, and with a flip of his hand, a black cloth appeared in his hand. It was the soul amassing banner. Previously, this soul amassing banner had been refined by him, and it was about to be upgraded to the level of a high-grade artifact. However, because he had encountered Fan Qingyu and the others, it was somewhat inconvenient, so he gave up on continuing to set up restrictions to upgrade it. Now, taking advantage of the time, he naturally wanted to finish what he had not finished before. Chapter 255. But very quickly, he noticed the thick layer of blood scabs on his body and the stench caused by the excretion of filth. Then, he noticed that the little black dog seemed to be unable to withstand the destruction of the smell and had automatically run to the furthest place in the room from him. Those slanted dog eyes were filled with disdain. Ziue's face froze. His body shook and the blood scabs on his body were immediately scattered. Then, he flipped his hand and a talisman appeared in his hand. Cleansing talisman. The talisman was activated. Instantly, his entire body was cleansed as if he had been splashed with water. Immediately, his body became very clean and slippery. At this moment, the black puppy ran over and lay down on a blanket not far from Ziyue. Cursing in his heart, Ziyue focused his attention on the soul-amassing banner again. He gathered his mental strength and a restriction engraving method appeared in his mind. Then, he carefully started to engrave it. On the other side, the black puppy seemed to have thought of something and quivered slightly. It glanced at Bai Ziyue cautiously from the corner of its eyes. Seeing that Bai Ziyue had his eyes closed and was not paying attention to it, the black puppy opened its mouth and revealed a joyful expression. Then, it tilted its head and opened its ears slightly. Crack! A piece of demon core fragment fell from its ear. A demon core fragment. It was the demon core fragment of the snake demon king that it had previously hidden. It carefully glanced at Ziyue again. Seeing that he was still not paying attention to it, it revealed a smug expression and went forward to lick it gently. Rich energy poured into its body. Immediately, it narrowed its eyes and revealed a look of enjoyment. Opening his eyes slightly, Ziyue glanced at the black puppy. Then, he engraved a normal restriction into the soul-amassing banner again. Buzz! In an instant, the soul-amassing banner shone brightly. Rich Yin-Chi filled the air, and almost instantly, it spread to the entire room. The instant the Yin-Chi dispersed, the little black dog, who was carefully licking the Yao core fragment, shuddered. It hurriedly swallowed the Yao core fragment into its stomach, as if it was protecting its food. Only then did it carefully examine its surroundings. However, at the next moment, a surge of dense and terrifying energy gushed out, turning into layers of waves that kept on colliding within its body. "Awoo!" The black puppy wailed and its eyes widened. With a thud, it fainted from the impact. The 54th restriction has been integrated. The soul-amassing flag has finally been upgraded to the level of a high-grade magic artifact. Ziyue's eyes lit up, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. Originally, he was about to give up on this artifact. Just like the portrait of the eagle swordsman, it was gradually being eliminated. In the end, because he had fused with the spirit demon, the spirit dragon's spirit core, it had regained its vitality. The quality of the magic artifact had been greatly improved. Now, with his sacrificial refinement, it had risen to the level of a high-grade magic artifact. Moreover, it's obvious that this soul-converging flag hasn't reached its limit yet. It can still be engraved with more restrictions. Perhaps I can really upgrade the soul-converging flag to the level of a top-grade magic artifact in one go? Ziyue thought to himself. He raised his eyes and glanced at the black puppy. After confirming that it was just stuffed and would recover after resting for a period of time, he didn't pay too much attention to it. Once again, he began to engrave the restrictions. Only when he felt a hint of fatigue in his mind and the number of restrictions on the soul-converging flag had increased to the level of a magic artifact with 57 restrictions did he stop. After recovering slightly, he didn't continue to engrave restrictions on the magic artifact. Instead, with a flip of his hand, he took out a golden book-like treasure. Zhou Tianyan's spell mirror. Without any hesitation, he began the sacrificial refinement. The Zhou Tianyan spell mirror was a spirit artifact. Its uses were mysterious and extraordinary. Naturally, he hoped to refine it as soon as possible to reach the level where he could wield it like an extension of his arm. From there, he could truly unleash the power of this treasure. Moreover, he had a premonition that this day was not far away. Perhaps in 1 or 2 days, he would be able to completely refine it. Time passed by as Ziyue continued to cultivate, engrave restrictions, and refine the Zhou Tianyan spell mirror. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. For the past 3 days, Ziyue didn't leave the house at all. He stayed in his room the entire time. Because the guest room he was staying in was a separate courtyard, and he had deliberately used a few array disks and array flags to set up a small spirit restriction array. He wasn't worried about being discovered. Of course, the complicated psychology of the few people who were monitoring him outside was not a problem that he needed to consider. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, they didn't dare to approach the courtyard where Ziyue was staying. Buzz. Suddenly, a soft trembling sound came from Ziyue's room. A golden book-like Dharma treasure immediately floated in the void and emitted a layer of faint golden light. The Zhou Tianyan spell mirror has finally been completely refined by me. I thought that it would only take 1 day, but I didn't expect that it would take me 3 days to succeed. However, it's all worth it. A hint of joy appeared in Ziyue's eyes. He stretched out his hand and waved slightly. In an instant, the Zhou Tianyan spell mirror turned into a ray of golden light and directly entered his body. It is indeed a spirit weapon. I can change its size as I wish, and it can be connected to my soul. When it enters my body, it won't hurt me at all. It's really amazing. Ziyue was overjoyed. Then, with a thought, he summoned the Zhou Tianyan spell mirror. This Zhou Tianyan spell mirror is a supplementary spirit weapon. It doesn't have much use in terms of attacking. However, it can be used to seal spells in advance, and then use this treasure to cast them. Or it can seal the opponent's spells and then release them in the opposite direction, giving the opponent a taste of their own medicine. However, the greatest use of this spirit weapon is to evolve cultivation techniques and restore spells. Thinking of the wonders of the Zhou Tianyan spell mirror, Ziyue's heart moved. With a wave of his hand, he instantly cast a spirit flame technique. Buzz. The Zhou Tianyan spell mirror trembled slightly, and the first page was flipped open. In an instant, a ray of golden light bloomed. As if it could seal the space, it directly sealed the flames formed by the spirit flame technique and pulled them into the spell mirror. With a slight wave, the Zhou Tianyan spell mirror returned to his hands. Suddenly, he was enlightened. As long as he wanted to, he could release the spirit flame technique sealed in the spell mirror at any time. At the same time, if he wanted to, he could also channel the spirit force into his body and restore the rune structure of the spirit flame technique through the effect of the spell mirror. With the intention of giving it a try, Ziyue did not hesitate and directly channeled his spirit force into the spell mirror. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In an instant, the Zhou Tianyan spell mirror trembled, and rays of spirit light immediately intertwined from within. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. The spirit force in Ziyue's body was reduced by 30%. Only then did the trembling begin to stop, following which, he discovered that a complicated rune structure had clearly appeared on the Zhou Tianyan spell mirror. As expected, the rune structure of the spirit flame technique has appeared on the spell-developing mirror. Furthermore, the rune structure has been optimized by the attribute panel. It is neat and tidy without a single mistake. In Ziyue's eyes, a ray of light suddenly bloomed. For someone like him who had always lacked spells, this was truly a rare treasure. It was indeed worthy of being the treasure of the immortal martial sect. As for the problem of consuming too much energy during the restoration process, in his opinion, it was an extremely normal thing. The Zhou Tianyan spell mirror was originally a spirit weapon, and with the heaven-defying effect of the spirit flame technique, how could it be done without sufficient energy? There are only a few hours left before the attribute panel is completely optimized. Ziyue's eyes flashed and landed on the attribute panel. Looking at the progress bar, it had already reached 99%, and his heart was filled with anticipation. Then, his gaze landed on the little black dog. The speed of this fellow's evolution really surprised him. Previously, the demonic core fragment had allowed it to evolve from a mid-grade beast to a high-grade beast. And a few days ago, another demonic core fragment had entered its stomach. It had evolved again. A top-grade beast. The change in its body size was not huge, but it was one size bigger than before. The biggest change was its claws and teeth. Not only were they longer and narrower, but they were also shockingly tough. With a light scratch, a large hole was created in the ground. Those white teeth were incomparably sharp. When it bit a rock, no matter how tough it was easily crushed into powder. It was extremely shocking. From the looks of it, it won't be long before it evolves into a demonic beast. Ziyue thought in his heart, his gaze slightly deep. He thought back to when he first met the little black dog, stubborn and vengeful. And now, it seems to have grown a little crooked. Thinking of the mysterious and arrogant look on the little black dog's face, he had the urge to beat it up. However, it's not completely useless. Other than being somewhat loyal, thinking in his heart, Ziyue stretched out his hand and pointed slightly. As his mental strength surged, he quickly drew out lines and lines of incomparably complex rune structures. Buzz! The void froze, and a pale white light was pointed out by him. Like a cloud, the pale white light quickly rushed to the little black dog's body. As if it had sensed something, the little black dog hurriedly jumped up and tried to dodge. However, this pale white light was extremely fast. The moment it jumped up, it had already landed on the little black dog's body. Then, the void seemed to have frozen. The little black dog's huge body was directly fixed in the void, unable to move at all. Treasure Stabilizing Divine Light. This spell was the special spell that the little black dog had awakened after swallowing the demonic core fragment, the Treasure Stabilizing Divine Light. With the help of the Zhou Tianyan spell mirror, Ziyue directly restored this spell. Thus, this magic technique became his magic technique and was mastered by him. After witnessing the effects of the Treasure Stabilizing Divine Light once again, Ziyue's face immediately revealed a satisfied smile. The little black dog immediately gave up struggling, looking as if there was nothing left to live for. Only that pair of dog eyes looked at him sideways, full of disdain. Chapter 256. Ding. Data optimization complete. A voice that sounded like an electronic voice was suddenly heard. The status panel has finally finished upgrading. In an instant, Ziyue became excited. His eyes flashed with ecstasy and anticipation. After waiting for so long, almost a month, the status panel had finally finished upgrading. In this month, without the status panel upgrading, he could not see the growth of his strength, cultivation progress, or even the increase of his spirit energy. This made him feel extremely uncomfortable, as if something was missing. Now that the status panel had finally finished upgrading, he could finally use its ability to quickly increase his strength. I want to see what kind of changes the status panel will have after upgrading. With this thought, Ziyue hurriedly stopped what he was doing. With a thought, a series of numbers appeared in front of his eyes. Name: Ziyue Martial Arts Realm. Early First-Rate Expert Immortal Arts Realm. Mortal Realm Stage 9 Perfection Martial Arts. 3 Martial Arts. 99 Immortal Arts. 1 Martial Arts. 1 Magic Arts. 17 Spirit Energy. 135456. His eyes flashed slightly. Ziyue was a little confused at first, but then quickly revealed a look of understanding. The inner force and spiritual force values have been simplified again. As for the martial arts, immortal arts, magic arts, and so on, they did not disappear. Instead, they were classified into 2 panels. For example, in the martial arts category, the main panel shows 3 categories. With a thought, I can open them and see what is behind them and what state they are in. With a thought, all the hidden martial arts and magic arts can be displayed in front of me. It can be said that it is clear at a glance. With a thought, Ziyue opened the martial arts panel. Instantly, a series of numbers appeared in front of him. Martial arts: Invincible Vajra Perfection, Optimization, Golden Bell Shield Level 6, 3%, Purple Mansion Creation Art, Purple Cloud Creation Art, 17%. Looking at the newly displayed numbers, Ziyue was stunned. percentage? Does this mean that I don't need to improve my martial arts to minor success, greater success, or perfection in one go? Instead, I can use 1% of my points to improve them? As for the Zifu creation chapter of the Zifu creation technique, its progress was 17%. Was it because he had broken through to the realm of a first-rate expert through his own efforts? Also, what's the meaning behind the indestructible Vajra divine art can be optimized? Immediately after, more doubts arose in his heart. Then, he quickly discovered that no matter if it was martial arts or spells, as long as he upgraded them to the level of perfection, there would be the word optimizable behind them. If it hadn't been raised to perfection, it would be displayed as a percentage. The only difference was the percentage. It was the same even for some martial arts and spells that he had yet to learn. These changes don't seem big, but they aren't small either. At the very least, he wouldn't need to accumulate spiritual energy for a long time to increase his strength like before. Moreover, the drastic change in strength would not arouse the suspicions of others. I can definitely raise my strength without making a sound. Also, if I'm not wrong, the optimization option should be the upgraded version of the previous fusion option. In the past, fusion could only combine martial arts or cultivation methods with similar characteristics. For example, saber techniques could only be fused together to form a new saber technique. But now the optimization is different. Even if it's not a saber technique, it can still be optimized and fused into one. For example, saber techniques, sword techniques, and hammer techniques can all be extracted and optimized into a stronger martial arts technique. If there's enough spiritual energy, it's not impossible to fuse immortal techniques and martial arts techniques into one. Bai Ziyu studied it carefully and made a comparison. Soon, he came to a conclusion. In his heart, he gradually became excited. In this case, as long as there's enough spiritual energy and the optimized martial arts technique is strong enough, I can even rely on the strength of a first-rate expert to contend with a Xiantian martial artist? He had encountered very few martial artists. Other than Kai Sun, who had been easily killed by Fan Qingyu, there was only the Chen family's elder, Chen Xianzhong. Through the comparison of their auras, although they were indeed very strong and far stronger than first-rate experts, he had a feeling that they were not invincible. No matter what, I'll increase my strength first. More than 1,300,000 points of soul energy is enough to allow my strength to undergo an astonishing transformation. Bai Ziyu didn't think too much about it. Instead, he focused on his spiritual energy. 3 million spiritual energy was a huge amount. It was the largest amount he had ever had. At this moment, he could be said to be rich and overbearing. Without hesitation, he began to improve his martial skills and martial art. Consumed 271,525 points of soul energy to upgrade the Purple Mansion Creation Technique's Purple Chi Creation Chapter to perfection. Upgrade. Looking at the cultivation progress of the Purple Chi creation technique, Ziyu didn't care about the 17% value at the back and chose to upgrade it to perfection. There was no other reason. He had a lot of spiritual energy, rich and overbearing. In an instant, Ziyu's aura surged. The circulation route map in his body seemed to have circulated 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 100,000 times in a short period of time. Not only did it expand his meridians countless times, but it also completely refined and purified the internal energy in his dantian. Vigorous internal energy flowed in his body, and his dantian swelled and expanded by several times. The pure internal energy brewed and was slightly mobilized. It was as if a huge amount of energy was being drawn. Even his physical body seemed to have been tempered and tempered thousands of times. It was more than twice as strong as before. As his aura skyrocketed, He felt as if he could capture the moon in the sky and catch turtles in the bottom of the sea. Consume 172,325 spiritual energy to upgrade the Golden Bell shield to the 9th level. Upgrade. He knew that as his strength increased and reached the level of a first-rate expert, the spiritual energy required to cultivate the Golden Bell shield would also decrease. Although 170,000 was a lot, he didn't feel reluctant and chose to upgrade it. 1. In an instant, the Golden Bell vibrated. Layer after layer of the Golden Bell rose from his body. As the layers stacked on top of each other, they quickly fused into one and turned into an ancient, heavy, and solid golden bell. This layer of golden bell floated up and down on his body, but it gave off a majestic and ancient feeling. It seemed very extraordinary. At the same time, his physical body was also undergoing an intense transformation. It was as if it had been tempered for countless days and nights, becoming strong and tough. At this moment, he even had a feeling that even if the divine black saber were to cut his flesh, it would be difficult to cut through it. As expected, as the Golden Bell shield and Violet Kingdom creation art were upgraded to the highest level, the words "optimizable" appeared behind the technique. Since that's the case, I might as well give it a try. With this thought in mind, he didn't hesitate at all. At this moment, Ziyue only wanted to become stronger. When it was difficult to increase the level of his immortal techniques, the best way to do it was to increase his martial arts. Consume 100,000 spiritual energy to optimize the fusion of the indestructible Vajra body, Golden Bell shield, and Violet Kingdom creation art. Optimize. Gritting his teeth, Ziyue chose to optimize. Although 100,000 spiritual energy was a lot, he was still looking forward to it. The improved cultivation technique would definitely be even stronger. As long as he could become stronger, this little expense was nothing. 1. It was as if the furnace of the great Tao was vibrating. After a few breaths, Ziyue received a new inner force mental cultivation method in his mind. The instant this inner strength mantra entered his mind, his inner strength immediately began to circulate according to this clearly much more complicated mantra, but also many times more valiant mantra. 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, as if it had gone through countless cycles, Ziyue directly upgraded this new inner force mental cultivation method to its peak state. Then, the moment he woke up, he immediately sensed that his strength was much stronger than when he was at the peak of the first-rated master. Not only his strength, but the purity of his inner force was even more so. This inner force mental cultivation method has completely integrated the characteristics of the indestructible Vajra body, Golden Bell shield, and Violet Kingdom creation art. It has also been optimized. It is really incomparably powerful. Although I dare not say that it is the strongest in the world, according to my estimation, there should be no other inner force mental cultivation method that can compare to this one. Feeling his current strength, Ziyue was so excited that his whole body was almost trembling. Although I have not seen many experts, but from the auras of Kai Sun and Chen Xianzhong, the two Khanate warriors, I can tell that they are not much stronger than me, or even slightly weaker. If this is the case, there are naturally many Khanate warriors who are stronger than me. But I think that there is absolutely no one below the Khanate realm. Therefore, my current strength should be invincible under the Khanate realm. Taking a deep breath, he knew that his judgment was a little arrogant, but in his heart, he had this intuition and even more confidence. This new cultivation method is both internal and external, combining both attack and defense. It is incomparably powerful. Let's name it the indestructible Vajra body. Thinking this in his heart, Ziyue's gaze fell on the numerous martial skills. There were a total of 99 martial skills. Although most of the martial skills were not very strong, and he had not even practiced many of them. But with his current cultivation and foundation, even if he just casually flipped through them, he would still be able to easily cultivate these martial skills to the entry level. Furthermore, there were many martial skills that had been cultivated to the great perfection level. Currently, the words optimizable were displayed on them. Muttering in his heart, Xiu's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of light. Today I'll go all out. Spend 242,312 points of soul energy to upgrade 78 martial skills to the great perfection level. Upgrade. A trace of determination appeared on Xiu's face. In an instant, under the impact of the massive amount of information, even his tenacious and powerful mental energy was somewhat unable to withstand it. The impact caused him to feel a little dizzy. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, after 10 breaths, he finally recovered from his absent-minded state. This method seems to feel good, but it's still better to do it less, especially when it's not safe. The moment I pause for a breath, it's very likely that the enemy will find an opportunity. Although he sighed in his heart, his face was soon filled with excitement. 99 martial skills were all at the great perfection level. A shocking sense of accomplishment immediately arose in his heart. But it's not over yet. Xiu's eyes flashed with a trace of light. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.